A woman? The person walking down the narrow alley wasn't what I expected. Rass's contact, Lloyd, was a woman. The name had fooled me. Well, there's no rule saying women can't show up in places like this. At first glance, she looked plain, the kind of face you forget after 5 seconds. But people like that tend to surprise you. I raised a hand. Here. She approached with an annoyed frown. Why did you want to meet in a dump like this? I can't exactly talk about this stuff in public. She sighed. Fair point. But her eyes narrowed. Aren't you retired? Why are you still wearing your work uniform? I blinked. She pointed. That's the same outfit you wore on duty. Right. I'd forgotten about that. My mimicry pheromones didn't affect me, so I never saw the illusion myself. In the game, the mimicry organ copied the target's state at death. When I devoured Rass, he'd been drunk and still in uniform. So the organ had replicated his appearance exactly. Clothes, stains, everything. That's a problem. The mimicry didn't rely on genetics alone. It blended sensory data, sight, smell, texture, then reconstructed a full illusion through pheromonal hallucination. Which meant if I consumed someone wearing a clown suit, I'd appear in one too. No changing outfits after the fact. This world isn't a game. Mismatched clothing draws attention. If Lloyd hadn't pointed it out, I might have been exposed already. I circled her slowly. Didn't have time to grab anything else. TSK. At least try to look the part. A man retires and still dresses for work? Wait. She stopped mid-sentence, sniffing the air. I've been smelling something strange since earlier. Forget it. I cut her off. Do you have information about the broker? You really want to discuss that here? Bars have too many ears, I said. True. She reached in her pocket and pulled out a small USB stick. Everything's on here. Files will self-delete in 24 hours, so read fast. That's strict, huh? It's sensitive business. She tapped her communicator, the glow briefly lighting the grimy alley. I'll send you the broker's contact. My own device vibrated. A single letter appeared on the screen, S, followed by a number. Simple. Anonymous. That's all, she said. Now, how about a drink? Sure. She smiled faintly and patted my arm, then froze. Her hand had touched me and felt something that wasn't human. The mimicry fooled sight, not touch. She couldn't see the truth, but she could feel it. You're not. Too late. I'd already gotten what I needed. My tail lashed out, coiling around her waist as she turned to run. Help! The sound died in her throat as one of my arms clamped over her mouth. Her eyes darted wildly, seeing Rass, but feeling something else entirely. Too many limbs, too much strength. The pheromones kept her vision fixed in the illusion, even as her body screamed the truth. Oh. Tears streaked her face. She looked pathetic. I tightened my tail. Her spine cracked, and the light drained from her eyes. Another corpse to clean up. I consumed her on the spot. The taste was dull. Nothing remarkable, just slightly better than Rass's cheap sandwiches. At least now I can mimic her too. Next was the broker. I checked the USB at home first, decide whether to make contact. After licking the blood from the alley floor, I slipped back into the hidden passage. Food smelled. Ate and came back. I answered. What about mine? I'd forgotten 26 again. I bring something next time. The broker. Sanders, a mid-level clerk on the Harbor Zone's material storage team, had a second job. His specialty was supplying rare creatures to Megacorp's upper ranks. Officially confiscated specimens. Unofficially smuggled pets. In his mind, it wasn't a crime. Having power and not using it. That's the real sin, he often told himself. Using his position, Sanders struck a deal with the smuggling animal surveillance team. They'd tip him off about seized creatures. He'd alter transport records so they disappeared. The partnership worked flawlessly for over a year, making him rich and invisible. Now, he had enough credits to retire on another planet, if not for the board. Damn that board, he muttered, staring at his screen. The next meeting was in 30 days, and citywide security had already tightened. Extra patrols, stricter scans, bad news for smugglers. Heading home, Sanders, a coworker, called. I'll stay a bit. Suit yourself. Once the office emptied, Sanders pulled out his personal laptop. A list of sleeping cargo appeared, rare creatures awaiting transport. Every entry was tagged scheduled. Normally, they'd be gone by morning. But heightened surveillance had frozen everything in place, and his profits with it. His comm unit buzzed. A new message. Sender, L. Sanders frowned. Didn't expect you to text. The message was short. Request. Outspacer trade. He blinked. An outspacer? Those were practically weapons. Nobody sane touched them. The last one in his database had been confiscated months ago. Then another message followed. Client. Cult in administrative zone. That explained it. Cultists loved anything dangerous and strange. He replied with the usual info. Location by the cranes, 10 p.m., payment up front. Seconds later, a reply came. Can we move to early morning? Sanders frowned. No one ever asked to change the time. The roles were always fixed. He set the schedule. They followed. Suspicious. He hit call. The line clicked, and a soft voice answered. Hello. What's with the change? You've never done that before. Oh, overtime. Overtime. Yes. Because of the mountain crawler incident. Sanders relaxed. Right, someone had mentioned a smuggling fiasco earlier. Oh, that. Yeah, fine. 1 a.m. then. He hung up, satisfied, and started editing the shipment logs to cover his tracks. Halfway through, a thought struck him. Why would a cult want a midnight trade? The unease returned. He picked up his comm again and made another call. Hey, I've got a meeting tonight. Might need backup. You know the place. 1 a.m. The man on the other end was the leader of Sanders' private security team. Ex-military, ex-police, fully armed and well-paid. If this deal goes sideways, Sanders thought, they'll regret showing up uninvited. Feeling reassured, he went back to work, unaware that something far worse than cultists was already moving toward him. Broker S. Careful, then. He called as soon as doubt touched him. That told me everything I needed to know. A prudent man will cancel a deal the moment something smells off. Lucky for me, he stayed. Caution pays. The USB Lloyd gave me narrowed his profile. Either a confiscation manager from the material storage team or a port security officer. Those are the two hands legally allowed to put seized animals onto a ship. Material storage moves paperwork. Port security can blink cameras at will. Either one can make things vanish. Or both, if someone greased the right palms. He was clearly middling management. Not insignificant, not untouchable. Smart enough to keep a smuggling racket running for a while. Kill him without reason and questions get asked. People notice when someone in his position disappears. Networks pull. Records get checked. That problem could blow up in my face. So I lied. I told him I had a buyer. I didn't. My credits were low and RAS had been poor. If S had smelled that I was broke, he would have cut me loose on the spot. I needed him, but I also needed an out that did not tie me to names and witnesses. I had one plan that might fix both problems. The outspacer. Its genetic essence could solve a lot. If I could prey on one and extract that trait, S would be manageable afterward. Eat the outspacer, see what the trait did, then decide how to handle the broker. The deal was close to finished. Unless something went wrong at the meet, the outspacer would be mine. After that, I would plan the next moves. There were other loose ends. Lloyd needed a resignation on file. I had sent it for her, using the communicator I took from RAS. With that done, and midnight passed, I left number 26 sleeping and stepped into the night. The harbor zone at this hour was quiet in a dull, enforced way. Fat policemen and chrome androids prowled the streets. I moved through a secret access tunnel to avoid cameras I could not risk. The container yard was a forest of metal and surveillance, but some lenses were dead, either a favor or a bribe. My auxiliary organ read the electromagnetic hum like threads. 3 cameras ahead. I skirted their cones, slipped through gaps between stacked containers, and followed the small electronic trail S had left. 10 figures waited beneath the crane's red lamps. 9 armed, 1 stout man with a shaved head and a smile that did not reach his eyes. Broker S. His crew was insurance, not hospitality. Laser barrels stalked my posture. A wolf stood among them. Wolves have animal heads and sharper noses than most. I could fake pheromones to fool visual senses, but wolves smelled deeper. That worried me. Where's the merchandise? I asked. In a refrigerated container. Password after deposit. He handed me a laptop. The transfer went through. My balance was thin. S clicked his teeth together with relief. One headache solved. He called the creature the outspacer and complained about cult buyers who wanted dangerous things. I played along while I watched his men, the wolf, the armor plating. The deposit cleared. Time to leave. Then Kate, the wolf, moved closer. She sniffed and frowned. Something's off, she said. S's face changed. What do you mean? Her scent is wrong. The guards closed ranks. Guns rose. Kate's voice carried weight. Wolves can sometimes pierce mimicry. Either she was sharper than usual, or the new reality made senses keener. Either way, it ended the easy way. I flicked my tail and jabbed her thigh. She howled, dropped, and went rigid from nerve poison. Her low-level armor did little. The other guards reacted instantly, a flurry of red lasers, powered armor, and cyborg limbs. Fine. I had grown. My body shrugged off laser fire like rain. Enhanced muscles, thickened carapace, traits I had already claimed. I moved. A snap of bone for one, a thrown spine for another. The tallest cyborg went down first, claws shredding his thin plating. Screams and the stench of burned servos filled the air. S's security started pulling him back. Get the VIP out, someone barked. The scar man at their head tried to stand and shoot. His laser skated off me. He pulled a sonic blade and lunged. He fought like someone who had survived worse, but his defenses were thin. Bone spines struck his abdomen. He raised the blade. It vibrated uselessly. I drove my horn into him and sent his organs spilling. He convulsed and died. Kate trembled, trapped and useless. Wolves counted as a playable, shape-shifting race. Their genes mattered. I deactivated the mimicry organ. The illusion slipped away. A membrane sealed the small hole on my skin. The pheromones dissipated into the night. Kate's eyes widened when she saw me for what I really was. Her body twitched under the neurotoxin. I held her with 4 arms and opened my mouth. Her head went in whole. Fur and teeth, muscle and scent. It was curious, palatable, not divine. I set the rest aside. S and his bodyguards had fled only a little. The auxiliary system pinged their locations nearby. The hunt was not finished. I gathered the corpses out of camera sight and left them where the lenses could not reach. Then I checked the readouts. They had not gone far. This was far from over.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Sander always considered himself a cautious person. It might be amusing that someone engaged in the criminal enterprise of smuggling thought this way, but at least he believed it. After witnessing others start haphazardly and getting caught, becoming employees of the entertainment district, he meticulously prepared for smuggling. He had established connections with the smuggling animal surveillance team, and even had influence with the port security team and, unbelievably, the security team of the administrative zone within the city. Among the criminals in this space city, there weren't many who moved as cautiously as him. Of course, Sander was a practical person and didn't believe he could commit the perfect crime. He intended to make enough profit to emigrate to another planet before the surveillance network closed in on him. However, he had no idea that an unknown entity would trample on his dreams with his goal almost in sight. Damn it! As Sander fled under the protection of a security guard, he cursed inwardly. He had turned off the cameras and asked the port security team to change their patrol route. Consequently, there was no one around here, not even androids. Of course, there were still functioning cameras, but he was afraid to run towards them. Just the fact that they had secretly infiltrated a place filled with logistic storage containers with several people in the dead of night was already enough to raise suspicions that they were involved in smuggling. Sander was well aware that smuggling was a serious crime in Megacorp. It was a real taboo. He could vividly picture the suffering employees in the entertainment district who were subjected to such crimes. I think we need to go to the police station. What? Going to the police means it's over for me. But we can't handle our opponent. It's better to request protection for now. Well, that's damn it. The security guard was right. Buying time was better than an immediate death. It seemed like it was time to see just how effective the credit Sander had been funneling to the Earth security team would be. One security guard stayed behind to watch their rear, while the other two stuck close to Sander, moving cautiously. The police station was not far from the freight yard. They moved stealthily between the massive walls made of containers. AR! A scream came from behind. Sander turned to look, trembling, but there was no one there. Only the laser rifle the security guard had dropped remained. We'll run. With tense expressions, the security guards grabbed Sander. They practically carried his half-bent body as they hurried. In the distance, they saw a partly open metal gate within the chain-link fence surrounding the freight yard. Just have to cross that, Sander thought with hope. But as they were about to do so, one of the security guards stopped. Wait, what? I heard something. At his words, Sander listened carefully, and he indeed heard some strange noise. Whenever the crane moved a container, there was a sound that could be likened to a hammer striking at regular intervals, but much quieter. Once you get out there, it's the police station. Run. What? I said run right now. At the security guard's command, Sander sprinted. Behind him, both security guards held laser rifles and kept an eye on their surroundings. Within a few minutes, the security guard's earpieces crackled with sound. The noise heightened Sander's fear several times over. He ran like a madman, losing his shoes in the process, but he didn't notice. The metal gate was right in front of him now. As he reached for the partially open door, he felt a slight stinging sensation in his calf. Suddenly, his legs gave out, and he slammed his face into the chain-link fence. It should have hurt terribly. Blood flowed so much that it should have been painful, but he couldn't feel any pain at all. What's going on? Only then did he realize that his body was completely paralyzed. Lying on the ground like a log, it finally revealed itself. GRRR. It drew closer to his face, drooling. Seeing the monster's dripping mouth, Sander involuntarily wet himself. It briefly growled and then lifted Sander's body. What the? Where are you taking me? The place it took Sander to was where they had first met, under the container crane. It threw Sander to the ground. What's going on? Leaving Sander there, it approached a refrigerated container. It was the container where the outsider was kept frozen. The guy standing in front of the container brought his head close to the terminal. What are you doing? Sander asked, unsure. After a moment, the person operated the small device on their chest, easily opening the container door. With a thud, they entered the container. An hour had passed since the person entered the container, and they still hadn't come out. Sander was becoming increasingly desperate. Please, can someone help me? He shouted. He knew he needed to escape while the person inside was preoccupied, but his body refused to move. He lay there, emitting an unpleasant odor, unable to do anything but wait. It smells. I brushed the shoulder stained with Broker S's discharged bodily fluids. I intended to intimidate, but I didn't expect him to be so frightened. I even deliberately stabbed gently to avoid shocking him too much. I shouldn't kill him just yet. Broker S is an important figure. Even if I were to devour him, it must be at the right time. Before dealing with the broker, I should handle this first. I was now inside the frozen container where the outspacer is stored. The container was packed with 20 cryogenic tubes. Broker S was outside, and there were corpses scattered around. I needed to quickly consume the outspacer and clean this place up. I operated the terminal on the front cryogenic tube. As the cool air rushed out, the glass door opened. Inside was a creature that looked like a cross between a crab and a camel spider. About 80 centimeters in size, with a body resembling a camel spider, and all 8 legs were as long as the body, with 2 of the legs ending in large pincers. Its face had a long and pointed upper jaw, making it look like it was holding a sickle in its mouth. I thought it was a mutant, but it's not. The creature in the cryogenic tube was a type of insect. It wasn't listed, so I naturally thought it was a mutant. It's okay. It's just the same if it's not a queen. There shouldn't be any issues. I can acquire the desired traits from any type of outspacer. I tore the creature's head off and devoured it. It would be great if it wasn't so cold. The creature tasted like crab meat. To be precise, It felt like eating crab meat straight from the refrigerator without thawing it. Oh, should I call it crab stick flavor? Anyway, it had a taste that grew on me. Since the insect were less than 1 meter in size, it didn't take too long to finish eating them. The first one is a miss. With 19 left, I diligently consumed the remaining outspacers. When only 3 remained, I couldn't help but feel anxious. It's not showing up often enough. I knew that the probability of the predation effect wasn't high to begin with, but if it hadn't shown up by now, I might have to give up and consider other options. Should I just spare Broker S? He came here for smuggling. Smuggling was a serious crime in Megacorp, so even if I killed all of his bodyguards, he couldn't go anywhere to complain. Moreover, it would raise suspicion if he did, but leaving a loose end would be a burden. On the research vessel, everything operated under the logic of convenience because it was essentially a ship. Predicting human relationships was relatively easy, but the city was different. I didn't know if the author had close relationships with anyone or possessed means to threaten me. I need to be prepared. In a way, I'm not sure how I've managed to survive smoothly up to this point. If it were a game, I should have died countless times in situations I've faced. Obtaining the genetic essence from 20 creatures isn't an easy task either. Even though I ate more than 100 of the same creatures in the game, there were times when I couldn't obtain any genetic essence. Particularly when facing creatures like Galagon or Vortex One, and the predatory effect didn't trigger, it was so challenging that I felt like giving up on the game. I've experienced situations like this in the game before. I assumed that nothing would come from the outspacer, so I picked up one of the remaining 3. I had consumed the animal, but once again, the predation effect didn't trigger. Now, there were only 2 left. I was on the verge of giving up. Should I just give the last one to number 26? If I ate 18 out of 20 and nothing happened, I had to consider it impossible. I bit into one of the 2 remaining creature's legs with a sense of resignation. The crunchy texture and the juicy flesh inside pleased my palate, but my heart felt heavy. When I had finished eating all the insects, a miracle happened. Predation effect activated. Successfully obtained parasite genetic essence from outspacer insect. Extracted the parasite from the biological traits of outspacer insect. Would you like to apply the parasite? It's done. At last, when I got what I wanted, I couldn't help but cheer out loud. Parasite. Outspacers naturally carry various biological parasites in their bodies as a racial characteristic. Parasites are one of these pathogens and can infiltrate the host's body to control their movements. Of course, the outspacer's parasite only limits the target's actions to some extent. In terms of lore, it was impressive, but in the game, the outspacer's parasite was implemented as a debuff mechanic. Those affected by the parasite effect experienced limitations on their abilities or equipment usage. Actually, even just this feature is powerful enough, but getting the parasite changes the game. When combined with the contamination organ, you can create an enhanced parasite. As per the settings, it's possible to produce a parasite that can control other creatures. The contamination organ disappears, and the physical traits change completely, but I currently have a total of 11 physical-related traits. Since the type acquisition condition is having 10 or more traits, losing the contamination organ won't affect my type. Furthermore, the trait obtained by combining the parasite and the contamination organ serves as the key to unlocking a new type. The new types that open up are infection enhancement types, related to physical abilities, psychic enhancement types, and the newly unlocked type through the combined trait is the infection enhancement type. The infection enhancement type affects debuff-related traits like crowd control devices. Its intuitive effects may be lower compared to other types, but it's very useful for someone like me who prefers a stealth-focused strategy. Moreover, to evolve into a quasi-saint, I need to gather 4 types, so gathering one more is crucial. Therefore, my choice is clear. I immediately felt my body undergoing a mutation. The lower right arm, which used to house the contamination organ, grew thicker and bulged as if something like eggs was inside. Inside the arm, newly formed parasites wriggled and waited for their owner's command. Parasite trait has been applied. Can be fused with the contamination organ previously possessed. Fusion of parasite and contamination organ traits. Evolves into parasitic colony trait. Parasitic colony allows the creation of enhanced parasites at the expense of losing the effect of the contamination organ. Up to 5 enhanced parasites can be operated. Asterisk P.S. I don't understand your love of this disgusting trait. There are currently 2 types that can be characterized. Psychic enhancement type, 5/6. Infection enhancement type, 1/4. All right, now that I've obtained the desired trait, it's time to test its effects. After devouring the last remaining outsider, I exited the container. S, who had been diligently poking at the ground, looked up at me with a terrified expression. His face, now pale and almost yellow, clearly showed the fear of someone who had just experienced horror. However, he hasn't truly experienced fear yet. The real terror begins now. As I activated the parasitic colony, my lower right arm started to squirm and bulge as if it were trying to expel something. From the hole in the palm of my hand, black, centipede-like creatures emerged. W, what are you trying to do? Please stop. S, who mixed screams with sobs, began to cry as I approached. His formerly chubby face had become disfigured, possibly due to the mental shock he had experienced over the past few hours. My hand got close to his swollen, half-faced visage. Then I'll go. Broker S, or rather, Sander, lowered his head and left. The parasite transplant was successful. Now, Sander is mine. Still, it's limited to 24 hours. Once 24 hours pass, the parasite will automatically die, and so will Sander. This is because the parasite has taken control of his brain. Before the parasite dies, I have to replace it to keep Sander alive. Sander knows this fact. Without me, he will also die. He's a smart person, so he won't easily resist me. He might try to go to a hospital for an extraction, but his thoughts are known to the parasite. If he ever entertains malicious intentions, the parasite will secrete a substance into his brain, causing excruciating pain. It's going to be incredibly painful. Sander has already experienced how excruciating that pain can be. He's unlikely to resist me too much. Moreover, I showed Sander how I dispose of corpses right in front of him. Being a smart person, he probably knows my intentions. Well, let's head back now. I took the lead with the bodyguards and returned home. Upon arriving home, number 26, who had woken up from its sleep, was waiting for me. Where did you go? ZZZ. I thought you might be hungry. Wow, it's a learning amoeba. As soon as I held out the food, he calmed down. As we shared a meal, I took out the neighbor's man's ankle from the refrigerator. As we enjoyed our late-night snack, the night faded away. Global Security Team, TNC, the top security organization within the TNC Special Trade Center, oversees not only the police stations in each district, but also the crisis management team stationed in administrative districts. While it's not typically a bustling place, it felt very busy, perhaps because the assembly is just around the corner. What happened to the Star Union terrorists? When will the interrogation reports be released? Who handled Eden's fleet deployment request? Is this how you submit reports? All entertainment district security teams assemble in Conference Room 5. Documents scattered everywhere, and security personnel in uniforms hurriedly moved around. In the midst of the chaotic atmosphere, the only quiet place was Conference Room 4. The detective team under the Port District Security Team had been planning to apprehend the criminals they had been tracking for a while, leading up to the assembly. This was because Chief Administrator Layla Chamberlain had made it clear to the Global Security Team that all potential threats must be eliminated. What happened to Broker S? After the assembly announcement, smuggling was halted, but suddenly, this month, the numbers have surged. We've confirmed 6 smuggling operations in the past week. In fact, it can be considered almost daily smuggling. At this point, sudden increased activity? That's strange. Detective Team Leader William raised an eyebrow at his team's briefing. Broker S had been their target for the past 6 months. The evidence had already been secured, but they had failed to apprehend him due to the interference from individuals who owed him a considerable amount of credits. After the failure, they had been monitoring him closely, and now, with the assembly approaching, they had a chance to arrest him officially. Even corrupt officials, as noble capital and rulers of the Space City, couldn't defy the direct orders from above. Has there been any change in the smuggling methods? That part is also peculiar. He mainly handled interplanetary smuggling, but the recent 6 incidents all targeted individuals within the city. Could it be due to stricter surveillance at this time? No, city transactions aren't very profitable. Broker S is a cautious individual. Would someone who maximizes profits from minimal transactions do something like this? They had a chance to make an arrest, but the fact that their target was coming out so sloppily made William uneasy. Will we be able to identify the trading partner? Who is it? It's someone we haven't dealt with before, a newcomer named New Face. New Face. We discovered him 3 days ago. He's a man who walks around in his pajamas, quite a ghostly character. Surprisingly, he never gets caught on camera. We're not sure if he's from the Space Dogs, but he seems like someone with professional training. We've tried to tail him several times, but he's slipped away every time. Dealing with Broker S alone was already a headache, but with the appearance of this formidable new criminal, William sighed. Considering the deals Broker S had been involved in, it wasn't entirely unusual for the Space Dogs to take an interest in him. With S's skills, he could practically turn money into a miracle. However, William wasn't so sure. Why now of all times? This doesn't seem like S. There was undoubtedly a reason behind the usually cautious Broker S acting so recklessly. After organizing his thoughts, William gave instructions to his team. The ones who followed the pajama guy, compile a report and request the surveillance team for analysis. Get in touch with the Port District to find out when he arrived. Keep an eye on Broker S as well, just in case he might try to contact the Space Dogs separately. Got it. Meeting adjourned. After the meeting ended, the team members left, but William remained seated, deep in thought. With one arm on the table, he picked up his communication device. Using a friend might raise suspicions, but the friend he was considering had been a former colleague in the same unit and had retired to work as a bodyguard. William knew exactly whom he was protecting. He's guarding Broker S. William left a message for his friend. 10:55. He should be arriving soon. I'm waiting with number 26 for Sander. Our location is near the boundary between the commercial zone and the Port District. Unlike the entertainment zone, there are hardly any people out here after 9 p.m. since all the stores close. It's also close to the secret passage. While there are cameras here, it's much easier to move around compared to the heavily monitored loading area. That's not the only reason I moved here. The reason for the change in location was due to the surveillance. 3 days ago, I met Sander near the cranes of the docks, disguised as the guy from the adjacent house. That day ended without any issues, but I sensed that the surveillance was watching us from a distance. Sander is under my control, making resistance impossible. The identity of the Watchers was the police who had been chasing Sander all along. Getting caught by them would cause problems for me as well, so I changed the location and time. We're to meet near the boundary of the commercial and harbor districts at 11 p.m. Sander expressed his displeasure about me changing the location, but it was futile. The only thing he can do is obey me. There he is. The black refrigerated truck Sander mentioned was heading towards our meeting spot. The truck stopped, and Sander got out, wiping the sweat from his forehead. It had been a week since he handed over the confiscated animals. His face had changed beyond recognition. He had lost almost 2/3 of his body weight, looking so emaciated that it was hard to believe. The cause of Sanders' transformation was the parasite attached to his brain. When implanting parasites in other organisms, you can specify the level of constraint, i.e., how much the host will be restricted. Level 1 is the weakest constraint, and level 5 is the highest. The parasite inside Sander is at level 4. This level signifies that the parasite will immediately restrain him if the host shows even a hint of resistance. Because of this command, he will be tormented by the parasite while eating, while going to sleep, and even while working. Obey me. Do not resist my will. Even in the game, if you get infected by a parasite, a message pops up. I had learned this by watching videos uploaded by players who had fallen victim to parasites. When infected, a message appears every time you perform a certain action. It's not a big deal on its own, but each message causes a certain amount of health loss. Therefore, if players couldn't get rid of the parasite using other equipment or abilities, they often ended up committing suicide. Suicide removes the parasite's effect as well. Here, in reality, suicide is not possible. There's no way out except enduring the pain. I emerged from an alley near the meeting place, revealing myself to Sander. Although I had seen him several times, he still appeared uncomfortable and swallowed hard when he looked at me. However, he soon knelt before me, bowing his head. I brought the item you mentioned, so please. I might be frightening, but the parasite inside his head is probably even scarier. In 24 hours, he'll lose his mind along with the parasite. There's still some time left. I placed my hand close to his head and activated the parasitic colony. SSSSS. Then Sanders' eyes rolled back, and his mouth opened wide. Subsequently, the parasite emerged from his nostrils. The parasite that came out wriggled once and died on the spot. Good job. In place of the deceased parasite, a new one emerged from my palm. It entered Sanders' body in the same manner as its predecessor. Cough, cough. After a while, Sander, who had regained his composure, coughed forcefully. He seemed to shudder as he looked at the parasite spread out on his knee. I stared at the trembling Sander for a moment, and then he cleared his throat and handed me a document. Ahem, it's a list of organisms. To examine the list more closely, I received the document that Sander, with his combat arm, provided. Sander shivered as my unseen arm took the document. ZZZZ, am I that scary? The big baby is cute. ZZZZ, thanks. Yeda. I patted number 26 on my shoulder, expressing my gratitude, and handed over the document. Today, it's Plentrezid and Fairy Wing, right? Plentrezid resembles a stegosaurus in appearance, but is classified as a plant-based organism rather than an actual dinosaur. It also possesses the unique trait of robust vitality, which is my second acquired trait. 5 Plentrezads. It's not a lot. Plentrezads are large creatures, so it's not easy to transport many of them by truck. The truck's capacity is probably limited to about 8 of them. Next is a fairy wing. Fairy wings are typically carnivorous birds about the size of a human palm. They lack eyes and resemble blue crows with hooked beaks. They are also known as flying piranhas. A mutant. A mutant fairy wing. It's a creature I've never encountered in the game. It piqued my interest, but unfortunately, there was only one of them. If there were more, I might consider targeting their genetic material, but with just one, it's challenging. After reviewing all the documents, I pointed to the truck with my fingertips, and he quickly took out a handheld device. Here, I'll open it for you. When he operated the wireless terminal connected to the truck, the cargo compartment opened with a mechanical sound. It's chilly in here. ZZZZZZ, do you want to stay here? No, I'm good. I was just thinking about my hometown, Since sea demons inhabit the deep sea, this level of cold might not bother them at all. Sanders shivered, possibly from the cold within the cargo compartment or from fear, and stepped back. Then, I'll wait here. I left him behind and entered the truck's cargo compartment. Inside, made of alloy, 5 Plentrezads lay anesthetized. I lightly bent the steel bars and placed my foot inside the cargo compartment. Oh, I guess I don't need to open it. Sander began to speak to me belatedly, but stopped when he saw my imposing presence. Should I kill them first before eating them? I proceeded to break the necks of the Plenterzads one by one. During the process, one of them, still not fully anesthetized, attacked me with its sharp, thorn-covered tail, but it couldn't pierce my exterior. It met its end as my combat arm crushed its head. Having cut off their lifelines, I tasted the flesh of these large plant-like creatures. It tastes like getting healthier. Although in the settings, Imorph is an omnivore, it seems to lean more towards carnivorous eating habits. The Plenterzad's meat had a somewhat grassy taste, which wasn't to my liking. Is it tasty? Z's no. Big baby needs to grow bigger, so eat it all. Number 26 is right. I have to evolve further, so I should eat everything like this. I forced myself to eat everything, but it didn't trigger the predation effect in these creatures. Well, it's a pity, but I'll have to wait for the next one. When I looked at the list left by the cyborg Ras last time, there were a total of 30 Plenterzads. There are 25 left, so I hope to find something among them. I'll have a mutant fairy wing as a snack. Since it's a bird, I expect it might taste like chicken. With that in mind, I opened the freezer. However, I was taken aback when I checked the freezer's contents. Why? What's wrong? Number 26 asked from the side, but I couldn't respond. With blue skin and a body resembling reptiles, small wings on its back, and horns on its head, not a mouth, but long clusters of tentacles. It's a Galagon, isn't it? What was in the freezer was not a fairy wing. It was the hatchling of the Galagon, known as the space dragon, the blue Galagon. In a world of space survival, there are over 1,000 non-playable species, based on what's known. While there are over a few hundred planets that players can explore, it may seem relatively small compared to other online games, but it can be considered relatively large. The in-game species have unique behaviors that correspond to their respective habitats. They're designed to reflect the traits of wild animals living in similar ecosystems, giving them a lifelike feel. For intelligent NPC species, players who enjoy the game can experience a high level of realism based on specific cultural motifs. However, space survival is still a game, so not everything is entirely realistic, and exceptions exist. For instance, the Galagon. Inspired by the dragons of mythology, Galagon exhibits quite different behaviors in many aspects compared to regular creatures. Actions like collecting various treasures and artifacts in their nests, or using powerful psychic powers to destroy cities near their nests, are far from the instincts of ordinary animals. One of these Galagon's unique characteristics is their intense affection for their offspring and their kind. Galagon prefers to live in groups, much like lions. A Galagon group typically includes one male and 7 to 8 females, with the weakest presence, the blue Galagon, receiving protection from the entire group. In the game, this setting is implemented as the blue Galagon's unique ability, summoning its kin. In the lore, Galagons are connected through their unique psychic powers, allowing them to call each other even if they are far apart. In the game, this connection is represented as a summoning technique, allowing the blue Galagon to summon its group members at will. As a result, the blue Galagon itself is quite weak, but due to its association with other Galagons, it becomes a challenging prey. High-level players might find it easy to capture a blue Galagon that is hard to find, but the kin summoned by the blue Galagon are not considered real creatures but rather summons, so players cannot obtain items or attributes from them. To be honest, it's because of that I tend to catch more of the green Galagons or white Galagons than the blue Galagons. In Amorphous terms, the summoning trait disappears from the green Galagon and above, corresponding to the Metamorph category. Of course, that doesn't make them easy opponents by any means, but compared to fighting other Galagon groups, it's much better. Anyway, according to the in-game settings, I am currently in a very serious danger. The creature in front of me definitely looks like a blue Galagon, but it's quite small, isn't it? Even though blue Galagons are not small, they are more than 2 meters, but this one is barely over 50 centimeters, a size that could be mistaken for a fairy wing if you don't know the Galagon species. I wonder how it got caught. If I were ordered to capture a blue Galagon and bring it back alive, it would be an impossible task for me. There's something I don't know. A blue Galagon is not a creature you can easily smuggle, even for a common criminal, unless it's a higher cartel of space thieves or a power beyond Megacorp's prime capital that helps. Someone is trying to destroy this special trade hub. For a Galagon group, it's not difficult to destroy this place, the TNC Special Trade Hub. If it were a fortress-like space station with multiple fleets stationed, it could be defended, but this place doesn't have particularly strong military power. There is a defense fleet, but it's not capable of stopping the enraged Galagons. I called Sanders to understand what's going on. Yes, did you call, sir? Do you know what this creature is? Isn't it a fairy wing? When I asked in the neighbor's voice, Sanders seemed clueless about what's wrong. Galagons are rare creatures, so he might not know. In the game, players who directly encounter each other are a small minority, and lower-tier users often come across screenshots and videos posted in the community. Most people here probably have no idea about the existence of Galagons. Who's the one who smuggled this creature? Oh, as far as I remember, it was Jade, a person named Jade Russell. Russell? Yes, he was imprisoned in the juvenile detention center and escaped not long ago. Russell. The last name sounded familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Oh, Arnold Russell. He was the steward of Si-Hyun Yujin and served as the crisis management officer on Samuel's research ship. Si-Hyun Yujin, who fought me, possessed the claw trait of white Galagon due to a gene transplant. Since she couldn't have raised Galagons herself, her faction must know the locations of Galagon habitats and nests. If that's the case, it wouldn't be too difficult for her subordinates to sneak Galagons in. That means a noble capital, the Yujin family, planned to attack the city of the TNC family, which belongs to the same social class. I've seen a similar scene somewhere before. I've encountered similar situations in the game many times. It's the event that Megacorp players look forward to the most. Civil War. By the game's design, Megacorp is governed by 7 dominant families. The 5 families under Noble Capital and the 2 families under Prime Capital compete to become the sole rulers, sometimes leading to violent conflicts. Is there a festival in this city? Yes. Are you talking about the council? The council? Yes, it's scheduled for the Prime Capital directors to gather to decide the next Megacorp CEO. There are 23 days left until the council is held, starting from today. As I listened to Sander, I started to understand. The highest leader of Megacorp is determined through an election. If the 5 families under Noble Capital nominate candidates, the directors of the 2 families under Prime Capital vote for the CEO. In the game, Megacorp players strive to gain power in their factions to secure the CEO position when their family is nominated. Or perhaps they might want to manipulate things to prevent the other candidate from becoming CEO. It's one thing to do that in the game, but in reality, it's a different story. Si-Hyun Yujin probably ordered her subordinates to smuggle the Galagons ahead of the council announcement. Afterward, they planned to kill the Galagons in line with the council schedule. As TNC is currently a competitor to the Yujin family, her actions aren't entirely incomprehensible. Anyway, she's already dead. There were 23 days left until the council. Jade, who is supposedly missing, is likely hiding somewhere in the city, planning to kill the blue Galagon on the day of the council. His owner is already dead, but the execution of the plan is still uncertain. What should I do? Releasing the Galagon now isn't ideal, but eating it isn't a good solution either. Galagon's traits are highly desirable, but the timing is crucial. If it weren't for the council, I would have eaten it and fled to another planet immediately. While contemplating, the frozen blue Galagon's tail suddenly twitched. Hey baby, it's moving da. ZZZZ, I saw it too. I hurriedly tried to close the freezer, but the Galagon opened its eyes. The violet, shining eyes scanned the surroundings before coming to a halt on my face. Then, the little creature started trembling. Oh no. I quickly picked up number 26 and held it in my hands. Fear. Despite its young age, the Galagon's powerful psychic wave passed through my body. Thanks to my psychic resistance, I wasn't harmed by the psychic wave. Number 26, under my protection, also didn't experience any significant shock. Unfortunately, Sander, who had no protector, couldn't withstand the Galagon's psychic attack. He trembled as if electrocuted and then fell unconscious. ZZZZ, stay calm. Black, darkness, fear, death. ZZZ, not harmful. The creature halted its psychic attack on my words. It wasn't a lie. I couldn't kill it right now. If I planned to capture and consume it, I need to wait for an opportunity to escape this city first. You, adult, trust, calm. In a way unrelated to my inner thoughts, it seemed like the creature had placed its trust in me. The Galagon's psychic waves had changed from the electric guitar-like sounds they were a while ago to gentle, calm ripples. An adult. In the game, Galagons communicate exclusively through psychic waves, so they convey words or concepts to communicate. Based on the words it used, it seemed to consider me the adult of the group. Is it because of this? I pondered the monster's tentacle extending from the back of my head. While the location was different, it looked just like the white Galagon's tentacles in terms of appearance. Come to think of it, is it because of the monster's tentacle that we can communicate? In the game, Galagons sometimes speak to players, but the reverse, where players speak and Galagons understand, isn't possible. It seemed like the tentacle granted me the ability to communicate with it. Anyway, this little one seems to think of me as a white Galagon. For now, I decided to take advantage of its misconception. I questioned the creature, which now appeared more stable. ZZZZZ, why did you come here? I'm mutant hometown exile. The creature unexpectedly responded. Exiled because of being a mutant? As far as I know, among the Galagons, there are variations, but they're slightly different from mutations that occur among regular organisms. Variations were Galagons that excessively consumed psychic powers and transformed into grotesque monsters, leading to their rejection by their own kind. You could think of them as fallen dragons, like those commonly seen in myths and other media. But it doesn't seem like a variation. If it were a blue Galagon, being a child, there would be no reason to excessively consume psychic powers. Given its much smaller size compared to its kin, it seemed like it had been exiled due to a mutation, as it claimed. It seems like Sihyun's subordinate was up to some mischief. If this creature has been exiled from its homeland, their plan is effectively null and void. Wait, does that mean I can eat it without a problem? The ability to call its kin was probably still present, but if it didn't come when called, there was no need for me to capture and consume it. The creature sensed the change in my demeanor and quickly transmitted its psychic thoughts. I survival, you promise in return, treasure. Zzzz. If I spare you, you'll give me a treasure as a reward. To a morph, genetic essence and relic equipment are the most important treasure. When I showed disinterest, it spoke again. Memory, Dragon's Nest, you, guidance possible. In response to that, I lowered the tail that had been poised to strike. It claims to know about a dragon's nest. I didn't need a treasure, but a dragon's nest was a different matter. Ever since I became a pre-saint, it was a must to capture Galagons. It was both a condition for evolving into a quasi-saint and to obtain rare traits. Dragon's nests were the optimal locations for Galagon gene farming, as they were the habitats of Galagon communities. Information about a dragon's nest is premium knowledge. I pondered over the two potential rewards. Now that the risk of summoning kin had dissipated, there wasn't much harm in eating the creature. Given my current situation where I lacked psychic-related traits, consuming it wasn't necessarily a bad idea. Of course, there's no guarantee that the predation effect will trigger. Conversely, if I didn't eat it and kept it with me, I could gain information about the dragon's nest. I wasn't sure how it knew about the nest, but Galagons were known not to lie. In other words, the creature's words are true. The creature seemed to leave the choice to me and waited quietly. It showed no signs of resistance or alternative thoughts. Kill it or spare it. My tail swayed back and forth, mirroring my conflicting feelings. After several minutes of contemplation, I made a decision. X01. In a garden lush with foliage, Si-hyun Yujin was seated. She gazed blankly at a small bird perched on a tree, chirping away. Suddenly, attendants emerged from somewhere, pulling a cart filled with food. "Miss, it's mealtime," said the butler. Si-hyun turned her head at his words. The hologram of the garden vanished, replaced by a pristine laboratory that resembled pure white snow. The attendants set up a makeshift dining table and placed dishes of food on it one by one. The butler introduced the food with a courteous demeanor. The main dish is roasted duck with maple sauce. In the Star Union, the ownership of personal property and luxuries was prohibited. The Cybernetic Council had decreed that all cyborg citizens could only consume prescribed food and nutrients. Because of this, even in the capital city, it was difficult to obtain any ingredients that deviated from the ordinary. Si-hyun looked down at the food on her plate with an indifferent gaze, as if obtaining such hard-to-come-by food in X01 was as challenging as catching stars from the sky. Miss, this is one of your favorite dishes." She knew it too. She recalled how much she longed for this dish when infiltrating the space dogs. "Yes, it's a dish Si-hyun Yujin likes." As if reading her mind, the housekeeper's voice became stern. Miss requested that we replicate all of her habits, clothing, and even her favorite food, and match everything perfectly. Miss mentioned it was necessary due to the side effects of clone technology. In an era where humanity could travel at near-light speeds, there were still uncharted territories. One of them was the production of cloned humans. Even for the Yujin family, which had advanced genetic science to the extreme, the forbidden act of manufacturing cloned humans was no easy feat. Creating a duplicate that was physically identical was achievable, but making one that thought and acted the same way was an entirely different challenge. Moreover, transferring the memories of the original to the cloned human to make them behave exactly the same way was considered an endeavor beyond science. Si-hyun Yujin had found a solution that relied on something beyond the realm of science. She had learned a method from a cult leader to use psychic powers to transfer memories and souls. This peculiar individual, who referred to themselves as the Veil instead of their true name, had taken on a request of Si-hyun's father, Youngwoo Yujin, and taught her many things. He was knowledgeable not only in combat techniques, but also in various types of equipment, and even the genetic varieties and applications of various organisms. His teachings included methods for protecting and transferring memories and souls using psychic powers. Thanks to his guidance, she could even maintain her sanity when forced to become a shadow by external forces. She picked up a garlic clove fried in duck fat with her fork and put it in her mouth. The slightly sweet and crispy taste stimulated her taste buds, but she couldn't feel any enjoyment. "This isn't my pleasure." The technology to transfer the soul was clearly successful. All the memories she had until her death were perfectly transmitted to the clone's body. But why am I having these thoughts? Vale hadn't told her about such side effects. He talked as if it were an easy, straightforward process that anyone could do. Of course, Si-hyun wasn't naive, so she anticipated that simply transferring the soul with psychic power wouldn't be the end of it. I closed the door. Given the right conditions, this technology could essentially make a person immortal, so she was certain that there must be some unknown side effects. So, she utilized the precise engineering technology of the Star Union to create a machine that would readjust the clone's brain to match her soul and memories. Thanks to this, she was nearly indistinguishable from the original now. The only significant difference was that the genetic modification wasn't quite complete. Furthermore, she had provided detailed instructions to her subordinates on how to manage the clones and how to handle the transplanted clone souls. She had made thorough preparations to be able to respond perfectly to any potential side effects. However, she couldn't have imagined that she would feel this uncomfortable in her own body. Even during meals, the thought that she was consuming something Si-hyun Yujin liked didn't leave her mind. Damn it. After forcing herself to finish the meal, she received a report from her subordinates. The council will convene in a short while, right? Yes. According to intelligence, Akira Yujin is also planning to visit the TNC Special Trade Center in the tourist district. Tourist district? That old man even enjoys jokes now. She muttered coldly and then fell into thought. Akira is a gentleman who cherishes his life to the point of paranoia, but he's not a coward. He's unlikely to remain hidden on Earth during the council, a massive event. Akira moves with more than one shadow every time. He may not know, but Si-hyun saw through the weaknesses of the shadows. Even the weaknesses of Code Black, stronger than her. Even in her extremely weakened state, she was confident that she could defeat at least one shadow with a lower code than hers. What about the Galagon transport disguised as a fairy wing? According to Jade's report, it's still in the city. If there are shadows, even while Galagon is attacking, that old man would try to escape one way or another. The likelihood of that is high. The original plan was for her to personally eliminate Akira's escorts and then escape, leaving the rest to the enraged Galagon. With rival companies, Noble Capital and Prime Capital, unlikely to protect Akira, once his guards disappeared, he was as good as dead. The old man doesn't know if I'm still alive. No matter how formidable the Code Black was, he wouldn't think that a clone of a deceased person was planning to kill him. By exploiting this, even in her weakened state, she had a good chance. By using this to her advantage, even in her drastically weakened state, she had a fair chance. It's an opportunity to eliminate many nobles of Prime Capital, including Layla Chamberlain. Given her physical condition, it's a task she can't postpone or delegate to others. How will you proceed? The plan remains the same. Inform Jade that there are no changes. Understood, Mississippi. She dismissed her subordinate and clenched her fist. That bastard. All the pain, confusion, and turmoil she was going through were all because of that guy. She vowed to turn the monster who killed her into minced meat. 2 days had passed since Sander offered me a mutant Galagon, but I didn't kill it. Getting the nest is a better reward. Eating Galagon's flesh is quite a gamble. If luck is on your side, you might gain powerful traits, but if not, it's all over. On the other hand, making a deal with the creature meant getting nothing immediately, but evolving to the next stage would be much easier. Finding Galagon's nest is incredibly difficult. Thinking back to the struggles of searching for Galagon's nest during the game, knowing its location was an advantage. Of course, the creature had to stay alive until then. Big baby, look. Number 26, perched on my shoulder, spoke to me as I was lost in thought. Today, I handed over one of the praise Sander received to number 26. I did this to help number 26 grow. I mainly passed on creatures that had undesirable traits or a low population, making it difficult to expect a predatory effect. Coincidentally, I wondered if number 26 had met all the growth conditions, as it had grown another tentacle. Thanks to this, it now had 3 tentacles. Big baby, I've got a new arm. ZZZZ indeed. Number 26 seemed quite pleased with its growth from the food I provided, and it continued to proudly show off its tentacles. Whenever the slender tentacles waved in the air, they emitted violet, semi-transparent energy that lit up the surroundings before vanishing. It has definitely gotten stronger than before. I couldn't precisely gauge 26Ho's level of growth, but the fact that I could easily observe its increasing strength visually was undoubtedly a good thing. Meat food, thanks. ZZZZZZ. It wasn't me who provided it. Young adult, thanks. The Galagon perched on top of my head, and did Hai expressed gratitude to number 26, the one who had provided the food. The Galagon introduced itself as a member of the Odd Pack and asked me the name of my pack. However, I didn't belong to any particular pack. The Galagon had pledged to serve me, an adult, And since I didn't belong to a pack, its name automatically became Ed High without the pack's name. We also have to protect the little one dot. On my shoulder, number 26 glowed and expressed joy along with ripples. The sight resembled a child puffing up their chest, and I couldn't help but pat Ed High and number 26 without realizing it. In the game, there was nothing like this. It was a fascinating and intriguing change. The outsider race, the Emoth, who survived, hunted, and evolved on their own, now had two companion creatures. What's more, the creatures I was with were Galagons and sea demons, which couldn't be tamed in the game. When I first arrived in this world, I had three main goals: survival, hunting, and evolution. Achieving ascension was also part of the plan. These goals remain unchanged to this day. However, the path to reaching them has deviated significantly from what I initially imagined. Perhaps I'm changing along with this world? So far, the most common food I've consumed is humans. Their genes could be having an impact on me. Humans are social animals. They don't survive independently. They form groups. Among animals, there are species that mimic the appearance of their predators as a survival strategy. Maybe I'm evolving to adapt to the humans I've been interacting with. From an independent amorph surviving on its own to a predator that forms a society to hunt. That's the idea. While pondering such thoughts, I quickly approached the residential area. I slipped out of the secret passage and made my way through the surveillance network to enter the building. As I tried to climb the apartment building's exterior wall, a stranger's presence registered on my auxiliary systems. A man was standing in front of the neighboring apartment. His rough appearance and the tattoos on both arms didn't make him look like an ordinary civilian. He seemed more like someone involved in less legal activities. He appeared to be waiting for someone, tapping his foot impatiently against the corridor wall. I couldn't identify him as a policeman, and I was curious about who he might be. I signaled number 26 and Ed High to stay hidden momentarily and activated my disguise mechanism. I strolled down the corridor in the guise of the man from the neighboring apartment. He glanced at me. "When the hell are you coming?" He grumbled, apparently unaware that I was not who I appeared to be. I wondered if the landlord knew what his tenant looked like. Should I ask him? Pretending to enter Lass's apartment, I decided to strike up a conversation with him. "What's the matter?" "I don't know, just go in and get some sleep." "Do you have business with my neighbor?" He glanced at me with an irritated expression and then sighed. "Do you know this guy?" "Yes." "Damn it. Do you know this guy's been fooling around with my girlfriend?" "I see. I've been in a lot of relationships, so I've put a little tracker on her communication device. She hasn't been in touch for a week, and when I checked, it said she was in this house." He said this while showing me the screen of his communication device. It displayed an internet map. The map, simplified to the residential zone, had a red mark pinpointing this very location. "Take a look now. It's clear that someone is inside, but they're pretending not to be." "I see. This was completely unexpected. I never would have guessed that Lloyd had a boyfriend. Given his proclivities for indulgent entertainment with Lass, I never thought he'd have a separate lover. No, maybe it's for the best." I pretended to ponder while secretly scanning the entire apartment complex with my auxiliary systems. I couldn't detect any signs of police or android presence nearby. The man's actions were undoubtedly suspicious. Not reporting his girlfriend's disappearance to the police and coming to investigate alone made it clear that he was likely involved in something illegal. Perhaps she went out to buy something. I've been waiting for ages. "Don't worry. Why don't you wait at our place for a while? She'll be back soon." He glanced at me, inspecting my appearance. When his gaze reached my face, he flinched slightly, but soon nodded. "It probably doesn't matter. My artificially generated physique, crafted by the disguise mechanism, was more petite than the man's. Although my face might look unusual, I believed it was sufficient to handle any potential issues. As I opened the door, the man entered without any further suspicion. I hid on the other side of the corridor, peering out just enough to signal 26 Ho and Ed High with a flick of my finger. "What the hell? Clean up this place." "I'm sorry. And you, what's with that god-awful smell?" As the man turned his head toward me, his expression hardened abruptly. Before he knew it, number 26 and Ed High were blocking the doorway. Didn't you ever hear, when you were young, not to follow strangers? The Harbor Zone security team, under the command of Detective William, has now arrived in the residential zone. Despite sending messages, his friend has not responded for over a week, prompting him to visit his friend's home in person. No matter how busy he is, he always kept in touch. Someone who goes silent for over a week signifies there might be a safety concern. William knocked on his friend's door. With no response, after waiting for a while, he pulled out a concealed device from his pocket. This device was a hacking tool that he had secretly acquired with his authority as the team leader from equipment confiscated from criminals by the security team. After connecting the device and manipulating it, there was a clicking sound from the door. William unlocked the door and entered. William's friend, being a former soldier, had kept everything neat and tidy. However, the corners of the house had a musty smell, probably because the place hadn't been ventilated for a while. Upon closer inspection, it seemed like no one had been walking around for a considerable amount of time. The only sounds breaking the silence in the house were the virtual TV noise from the next-door neighbor and William's footsteps. His attention was drawn to a coffee cup left on the table. Some leftover coffee. The cup had marked from dried, evaporated coffee. It was evidence that it had been sitting there untouched in the dry room for an extended period. Something must have happened. With this conviction, William began his search. He thoroughly inspected every place where his friend could have hidden weapons and equipment, such as inside closets, under the bed, and so on. The result: he confirmed that some weapons and equipment were missing. Armed and gone, either missing or deceased. He had already checked all reports of violence in the Harbor Zone before coming here. None of them involved firearms higher than laser rifles. In other words, his friend had been eliminated discreetly. That man in his pajamas, part of the organization. According to recent reports, the individual who met Broker S was replaced by someone else. It was clear they were trying to avoid police surveillance and make efforts to escape the situation. William contacted his team through the communication device and then sat down, opening the laptop he had brought with him. "It's me." After sending the surveillance team, how did things turn out? The police had diligently tracked Broker S and the mysterious man, but they failed to capture them on camera. The man was exceptionally elusive, as William's team member had mentioned during the meeting. As a result, the surveillance team could only provide a composite image based on the police officer's recollection. This meant the surveillance team had to painstakingly compare these faces with those recorded by city cameras. The newly appeared individual is still under analysis. What about the guy in pajamas from the initial encounter? That case is already completed. We've compared faces from citywide cameras with those appearing in the vicinity of the Special Trade Hub. We've identified 20 similar individuals. Their profiles are being sent to you. A message soon arrived on William's laptop, indicating the file's arrival. While examining the 20 profiles, he furrowed his brows. Commercial zone labor? This guy doesn't have any priors. No criminal record to speak of. He looks exactly like that guy. What about his workplace? We tried contacting them, but he hasn't shown up for quite some time. Since he's a casual laborer, it seems they don't pay much attention to his absence. William wanted to press for more information, but he held back. In the TNC Special Trade Hub, the low-capital workers were practically treated as parts rather than humans. With the constant influx of people into the city, employees were not closely monitored. He also knew that it wouldn't change anything. This diseased city wouldn't change, no matter how much he questioned. It's a sick and decaying city. Not everyone in Megacorp approved of the oppressive system. There were those who had had enough of the society infiltrated by inhumane principles, and they sought refuge in star unions or space dogs. William, being a military veteran, wasn't fond of the fact that more people died in the entertainment zone than on the battlefield. However, he firmly believed that his duty was to serve Megacorp by apprehending criminals who harm society. He shook his head, dispelling these pointless thoughts. Over the communication device, he gave instructions to his subordinates, waiting for a response. For now, send a team to the man's workplace for further investigation. Reinvestigate the other 19 individuals, their workplaces, residences, and relationships. Yes, sir. Since I'm in the residential zone, I'll check it out myself. Yes? Wasn't today your day off? We don't get any days off in our line of work. Anyway, good job. William ended the call and closed his laptop. Before leaving the house, he quietly bowed his head in the direction of his friend, who was most likely already deceased. Your vengeance. I'll take care of it. According to the records, the man in pajamas resided in an apartment near this location. Just like his friend's place, the apartments in the residential zone were far from luxurious. They were built with cheap materials to reduce costs, which led to various issues. Among these problems, soundproofing was the worst. It's so quiet. Even considering it was daytime, this level of silence was a clear sign that something was amiss. It was as if no one lived on the entire third floor. Tense, William drew his laser pistol. He took a deep breath and then knocked on the door of his destination. There was no response. He knocked a few more times, but there was no sound from within. Out for a walk? Normally, he should have waited for a search warrant, but William didn't. Waiting for a warrant and then having the guy escape would only complicate things. Determined, he pulled out his hacking device again. With a quick crack, he opened the door. Upon entering, he sensed a familiar smell. The smell of blood. As a veteran and a detective, William had no trouble recognizing the sickening and repulsive smell. Unlike the smell, there was nothing unusual in the house. It was not as tidy as his friend's place, but it was reasonably well organized. However, William felt as though this neatly arranged home was a model, artificially constructed by a murderer to hide evidence. Is there nothing here? The smell persisted, but there was no concrete evidence to be found. William considered getting a search warrant and returning, but then he thought about the possibility of the suspect escaping. With resolve, he pulled out his hacking equipment again. He opened the door quickly, and as he did, William caught a whiff of the familiar scent. Nobody here. In its place, dried bloodstains were the only things that stood out. William hastily left the house. It's me. I found a person collaborating with Broker S. The location is... His urgent communication finally spurred the Harbor District Security Team into action. Pre-Saint, quasi-Saint evolution conditions partly have been met. Conditions: transformable species 2/20, incomplete. Humanoid species 12/20, incomplete. Psychic power using species 0/20, incomplete. Predation effect activated. Successfully obtained Predator's Claw genetic essence. Extracted the Predator's Claw from the biological characteristics of wolf. Would you like to apply Predator's Claw? Oh, except for when I met Sander, I had been feasting on the residents living in the apartment. I had just finished a meal in the last apartment on the third floor, and for the first time in a while, the predation effect appeared. At this point, acquiring a trait felt like a celebration, as if a text box had sent me a cake. Predator's Claw. As the name suggests, it strengthens the claws to be helpful in close combat. There aren't any special additional effects, but traits of this kind usually don't receive negative evaluations. It's fortunate, considering the lack of physical-related traits. Currently, I have a total of 10 physical-related traits, as the contamination organ became a material for the parasitic colony, but I need 13 to utilize the transcendent system. So I just need 2 more from now on. I accept. Upon accepting, my combat arm transformed with a noisy collision of bones. The fingernails, like razor blades, attached to the 4 fingers became thicker and longer, now resembling a giant hand axe. However, their sharpness hadn't diminished, and they seemed capable of slicing through a person's body like cutting fruit. As I completed the mutation, a text box appeared before me as if to report something. Race: unidentified aggressive space morph. Status: Pre-Saint. Objective: survive. Second evolution successful. Possessed traits: physical-related, applied type wings, chitinous exoskeleton, regeneration, fusion, neurotoxin glands, fusion, reinforced exoskeleton, acidic blood, enhanced reflexes, mimicry, serrated tentacles, contamination organ, spine projectile organ, predator's claw. Psychic-related: predator sense, fusion, human nature, monster's tentacles, and clairvoyance, psychic resistance. Infection-related: parasitic colony, fusion. Type: Physical enhancement type. Good. Evolution was progressing smoothly. The evolution conditions were slow, but steadily filling up. Lloyd's boyfriend, 9 bodyguards, excluding the leader and Kate, and including the 3 humans I've eaten from the 3rd floor in the last few days. That makes a total of 12. The man from a neighboring apartment and the head of the security guard were killed by me, but they didn't count towards the evolution conditions because I shared their corpses with number 26. So, the humanoid race was counted as a total of 12. Wolves, I've eaten 2, including today's. There are many playable intelligent species that can transform besides Volfs, but I'm not sure if you can find them in this cosmic city. Since Volfs are the most common, they will probably fulfill the evolution conditions when I eat all of mine. Once I eat all of my wolves, I'll fill more than half, and dealing with humans will be enough to complete the conditions. Once other conditions are completed, I'll need to prepare to eat the cult next. As both the acquisition of psychic powers and the evolution conditions are intertwined, hunting the cult is currently the most important element for me. Still, it's fortunate that I have psychic-related traits, like the monster's tentacles. According to the setting, the cult believes that their kind has been chosen by a higher will to freely wield psychic powers. So, species that can't use psychic powers are considered as mere monkeys by these arrogant folks. Of course, it's not entirely unjustified given that psychic powers are incredibly potent abilities, especially in a fight against someone other than me. When I fight them, it's best if they remain complacent. Their arrogance is an advantage for me. They underestimate the threat, even when I attack them. Hunting the cult isn't an issue, but the location is problematic. The cult is most densely concentrated in the administrative zone, but launching an assault there without proper preparation is not easy. While secret passages are connected, there are many cameras around manholes, making it impossible to move stealthily as if traveling to another zone. I should target other places before tackling the administrative zone, as it's too burdensome to assault them before they become even stronger. The attack on the administrative district will probably take place after acquiring the psychic enhancement type. Until then, the commercial district is the place I consider an alternative. Cults don't like the entertainment offered by Megacorp, but they go to the commercial district frequently because they go crazy for artifacts and valuable equipment. Especially with the recent influx of cults due to the council, fulfilling the evolution conditions, there shouldn't be a problem. Even if the surveillance is strict, it's still much better than the entertainment and administrative districts. Of course, the likelihood of getting caught will increase, but there's no other choice. Once the residential district is cleaned up, I'll nest in the secret passages before the contamination devices disappear. The spores I planted in the secret passages have grown significantly. Additionally, if I install nests in the area near the port district and the residential district where I frequently visit, I should be able to monitor the movements of the enemies without any problems. I'm planning out what to do next, but my auxiliary sensors have picked up a faint footstep sound. The 3rd floor was completely empty, so there shouldn't be any footsteps. As I left Wolf's apartment, I saw a man disappearing down the corridor on the other side. Instead of immediately chasing after him, I focused my auxiliary sensors on him. The location is apartment C3 in Block C. This perpetrator is related to Broker S, and he's a heinous criminal who also killed armed security guards. So hurry and provide support. Thanks to my super senses, I could faintly hear what he was shouting into his communication device. Is that a police officer? From what he was saying, it seemed like he was a police officer who had been tracking Sander. I'm not sure how he found out, but he also knew that I had killed the security guards. I got caught earlier than expected. I was planning to fulfill the humanoid species condition here, but it seems like it'll be difficult now. What do I do? I had 2 options, escape or confront them. No, escaping now will be difficult, since he had already requested backup. Leaving the apartment would not be easy. Even if I managed to get out, if I were caught in the secret passage during the escape, it would be an even bigger loss. The secret passage is my last line of defense, so I must avoid being caught there at all costs. So, there's only one way forward. Fight them. I need to take down the people who entered this place and seize the opportunity to escape. They are overwhelmingly superior in numbers, firepower, and all aspects, but being strong doesn't guarantee victory. Seeing the people I cruelly murdered might make them hesitate, and when the enemies are in confusion, that will be my only chance to escape. I woke up number 26 and at High, who were taking a nap. Big baby, what's going on? I'm tired. ZZZZ. Enemy is coming down. They might think they've already captured me, but there's one thing they don't know. A morph is a hunter. Chasing and hunting are what a morph excels at. Ambush. How the apartments that provide comfort and shelter to the residents transform under Amethyst's influence. What happens when humans enter Amethyst's territory without knowing? They'll find out soon. The enemies still have some time to arrive. Before that, let's think about how to prepare the meal. Currently, I'm in apartment C3 in Block C. The structure here is a corridor-style apartment, with a corridor on each floor, and each floor has 6 apartments, allowing for a total of 6 households. The apartment structure goes up to a total of 6 floors, excluding the basement, where facilities like generators and shared laundry are located. There are no elevators, and movement is possible only through the stairs at both ends of the corridor. They'll probably check the structure over there as well. Even if they don't, it shouldn't be a big issue since they have an android that can input apartment data. But androids have their weaknesses. Androids are very smart, but lack autonomous thinking since they operate based on predetermined programs. For example, if you tell an android to guard a building, it will easily eliminate anyone trying to approach or attack from a distance. However, they can't properly handle unconventional attacks like planting a bomb underground or bombing from the sky. In fact, when I melted the cooling system of the pirate ship with acidic blood, the android didn't recognize it as an attack. Human intervention can compensate for the android's lack of thinking ability. The enemies are likely to deploy a mix of androids and enhanced police officers wearing combat suits. In the game, Megacorp players were evaluated based on their ability to balance Hulk mutants, humans, and androids. Megacorp is considered a powerful species in the game due to its flexible playstyle. Players could either modify their own genes to play like the cultists or use the higher ability to command a large number of troops like the Outspacers. This place isn't a space fortress, so there won't be Hulk mutants. It will probably be a combination of humans and androids. The problem is the level of their armament. I recently confirmed that the androids are armed with Gauss rifles. Assuming the police have similar weapons, they are likely to be equipped with combat suits along with Gauss rifles. Since this city is wealthy, they'll probably come wearing intermediate or higher level combat suits. If I were on Earth or Mars, I would have to fight elite soldiers equipped with plasma weapons and advanced combat suits. However, this place doesn't have weapons that advanced. Still, it won't be easy. Laser weapons can't harm me, but Gauss rifles are a different story. I can defend against the main ammunition of Gauss rifles, tungsten rounds, thanks to the flesh reinforcement type. However, the real advantage of Gauss rifles lies in their ability to switch ammunition to suit various threats. If they use specialized rounds designed to enhance penetration, my outer shell won't stand chance. I need to finish this quickly before the enemies realize. I calculated where in the apartment to target the enemies using my auxiliary systems when I noticed 26 and at High entering my sight. Come to think of it, these guys are also predators. Both Sea Demons and Galagons belong to the category of high-risk NPCs. One is treated as a sub-boss, and the other has a nickname, Dragon. Both of them are still young, but it shouldn't be too challenging for them to hunt the police. Number 26 has recently matured, so using psychic powers shouldn't be too difficult. At High is a Galagon, so as long as it doesn't get attacked, there shouldn't be any major issues. If they can accurately target vital spots, even with modest psychic abilities, they can easily kill their enemies. I just need to instruct them on where to aim. ZZ. Come here, guys. I gather them around. Night had fallen in the space city, just like any other time, as the black curtain adorned with starlight descended over the entire city. The residential zone was an exception as it lay outside the curtain's reach. Unlike usual, the residential zone was illuminated as if it were an entertainment district created by humans. There was a profusion of lights on armored trucks, headlights mounted on the reinforced suits worn by the police, and a multitude of colorful lights emanating from various electronic devices that banished the darkness. But the commotion wasn't just about the lights. Sounds more fitting for an entertainment district than a residential zone filled the apartment complex. The police radios, the heavy footsteps of armed androids, and the sirens of police cars. "Hey, William, are you out of your mind?" The head of the Harbor District security team yelled at William. William, who had been silently inspecting his own reinforced suit, looked at him with an indifferent gaze. "What's the matter? Why in the world did you call the armed police just to catch one run-of-the-mill troublemaker working with a broker? Don't you realize this will escalate the situation?" William knew well that the head of the Harbor District security team was as greedy as his round belly. He was also aware that a considerable sum of credits had been squandered by Broker S among the bulging layers of fat. Moreover, you searched the material storage team, which has nothing to do with this. This is a clear abuse of power. William, who had left the apartment during the day, immediately relayed the information he had collected about Broker S to higher authorities, not the Harbor District security team, but further up to the Earth General Security Team. As a result, due to the sudden arrival of the police, the material storage team was in complete chaos. Broker S, or rather, Sander, was urgently arrested, and those connected to him were one by one locked up in custody. The material storage team's Sander displayed unusual symptoms following his arrest, seemingly shocked by the fact he was being apprehended. Currently, he is in a state of unconsciousness. Having completed the inspection of his reinforced suit, William checked the special ammunition for the Gauss rifle and asked, "How did you know about that?" "What?" None of us on the team reported the fact that the material storage team was searched to the Harbor District security team. "How did you know about it?" That's... And there's a misconception on your part, team leader. The one who's allied with S, or rather Sander, is not just a run-of-the-mill troublemaker. "What?" "That person killed the military-trained bodyguards escorting Sander." "What did you say?" "I didn't hear anything like that." "Naturally, you didn't hear it. I reported it directly to the Earth General Security Team earlier. They took the matter seriously, so they responded to my request for support." "What? Do you realize what you've done? This is a disaster." "A disaster?" At that, William grabbed the former superior by the collar. He bared his teeth like a wolf and growled. "Did you think no one on the top knew that you had conspired with the broker? You're done now." William didn't want to continue the conversation with his former superior, who had turned pale. Leaving him to his fate, William approached the armed police officers who were in the middle of their briefing. The team entering the apartment consisted of 12 armed police officers and 6 combat androids. Each police officer had a number from 101 to 112 written on their chest, and the androids had the letter M followed by a number engraved on their heads. Among the androids, M01, with the number 01, welcomed William. "I'm William, head of the Harbor District Security Team." "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you. Head of the Harbor District Security Team, William. I am Android M01, affiliated with the Earth General Security Team. I may be an android, but I am currently leading the operation, so you must follow my orders." "Understood." After a brief introduction, M01 explained the operation to the armed police officers. The objective was to apprehend the organization members who were involved in dealings with Sander and to collect evidence. Everyone, including the police and androids, knew what the organization members looked like. Pictures and profiles of these individuals were shared before Sander had any dealings with them. Furthermore, information about the surviving residents in Apartment 3 had already been shared. As William was preparing to enter with the other police officers, M01 called him. "It seems you aren't aware, head of the Harbor District Security Team." "What do you mean?" "The higher-ups have provided the new reinforced suits to the armed police officers. They've been upgraded in all aspects, with enhanced internal healing and enhancement effects. That's good news. In addition, these suits come with a small psychic shield device. Please press the violet button on your forearm. When William pressed the button on the terminal, a translucent oval shield popped out from his left arm. It's a psychic enhancement device created in collaboration with the Garmelda family. They sent it a few days ago to congratulate this council. I appreciate it. With that, the conversation ended. Now, all that was left was to proceed. I hope this goes well. The adversaries couldn't possibly anticipate that the police were equipped with new gear. Furthermore, the armed police officers from the Earth General Security Team were battle-hardened soldiers. To top it off, combat androids were providing support. It was a game they couldn't lose, even if they wanted to. We'll proceed. Activate the masks. With that command, all the police officers put on the masks attached to their reinforced suits. We'll start the search from the first floor corridor. Just in case, we'll leave 3 personnel on each floor. As they were about to start searching the second floor, a noise came through the communication device. Chijik here, over here, Chijik. M06? What's going on? One android lost contact. Which location? Apartment 105 on the first floor. M04, who is on standby on the first floor, please check immediately. 111, I'll check. M01 gave calm instructions without panic. Shortly after, a transmission came from M04. M04 reporting. M06's power unit is destroyed. Do we have information on the attack method? M04. It was destroyed by strong physical force. Detailed analysis is required. William felt something was off with this information. Clearly, the first floor had been thoroughly searched, including him, 13 people, and 6 robots. There shouldn't have been any hidden spaces for the enemies to sneak into unnoticed. Please report any unusual findings. We'll continue the search. 111 understood. M04 confirmed. As they were about to resume the search, the officer designated as 101 suddenly stopped in his tracks. 101? He stood frozen in place as if his body had been forcibly immobilized. Then, his head began to turn slowly. Observing this familiar sight, William shouted, "Crazy! Psychic POW!" Before he could finish, the officer's neck made a snapping sound as it turned 360 degrees. The police officer, with a completely broken neck, collapsed to the floor like a broken doll. It's an attack. All armed police, activate the psychic shields. Androids, be on guard. AR. At that moment, a scream came from behind. William quickly turned his head and saw the foot of the police officer designated as 112 hanging in the air. Some unknown force was coming down the exterior wall of the apartment, dragging the police officer with it. Open fire. Seeing this, the police officers and androids began to open fire fiercely. However, the assailant didn't pay them any mind and continued to drag the police officer away. William and the armed police officers pressed against the corridor wall and looked up, but all they saw was the pitch-black void. The abducted person is Officer 112. We'll check. 112, please respond. Chijik arg, chijijik ah, chijijijijik. Amidst the noise, a pained scream mixed in with the sounds, and William clenched his teeth in frustration. M01 mechanically repeated the same words without displaying any emotion. 112, if you are alive, please respond. Chijijijik. One final checkpoint. 112, if you are alive, please respond. Chijik, I'm on the 4th floor. That guy took me. 4th floor confirmed. With 112's response finally coming through with great difficulty, a collective sigh of relief passed through the police officers. Everyone empathized with the fact that 112's life hung by a thread, but being alive was better than the alternative. We'll split into 2 teams. 102 to 105, along with the chief and me, M02, will search the 2nd floor. The rest will continue searching the 4th floor. Within less than 30 minutes of entering the building, 1 police officer and 1 android had fallen victim, and another officer's life was in jeopardy. Despite the challenging situation, thanks to M01's command without a hint of hesitation, the atmosphere did not worsen. However, unlike the other police officers, William found it difficult to shake off an inexplicable sense of unease. Could it be that it was a mistake to bring only the police here? Such thoughts began to creep into his mind. It wasn't because he was a coward, it was something else. When 112 was taken, he had seen it clearly. The one holding the officer had 4 arms. This is an unfamiliar enhanced suit. I look down at the lifeless body of Officer 112. It seems to be an upgraded suit. The defense has significantly increased compared to before. If I were in an unenhanced state, it would have felt quite heavy. Even when I tore through the chest with my nails, it was surprisingly sturdy. Furthermore, it had additional features like a full-face gas mask attached to the helmet and a psychic power-resistant shield, elements not found in intermediate-level suits. It's a basic intermediate-level suit with a few advanced-level suit options added. Advanced-level suits boasted significantly superior specs compared to intermediate ones, making them considerably more expensive. It's close to half the cost of plasma equipment, so it could be seen as quite pricey. They seem to be developing cost-effective advanced-level suits. In the game, Megacore players had plenty of credits, and they didn't need to worry about the lives of mercenaries. However, in the real world, equipment for protecting living soldiers would continuously evolve in response to new weapon developments. Of course, being a budget version, the shield attached to this suit was likely far less effective compared to the shields on high-level suits. Still, it should be adequate to block even the standard rounds of Gauss weapons. For an ordinary person who can't afford cutting-edge weaponry, a shield like this should suffice. Looking at it this way, it's safe to say that the enemies are well prepared, even if the shield is not as advanced as high-level suits. If the opponent were an ordinary human, we would have easily won. Well, that's if they were truly ordinary humans. After all, they were after Sanders, and now they've come after me as well. They likely consider me to be some sort of spy for the Space Dogs or a smuggler. Before they entered the apartment, Sanders might have been arrested, leading to retaliation against me, the apparent parasite. Well, using Sanders is no longer an option. I'll need to find another broker or take advantage of the chaotic situation to discreetly raid the Harbor District. If I implant a new parasite in this apartment before leaving, finding a broker won't be all that difficult. But on a side note, these guys fight better than I expected. The ones who successfully took down the intruders in the apartment weren't me, but number 26 and Ed High. Before the police entered the apartment, I had instructed number 26 and Ed High on the weaknesses of both androids and humans. The power source location of the androids, their lack of autonomous thinking, the fragility of human heads, and so on. As a result, Ed High managed to take down one android on the first floor, while number 26 killed one of the police officers on the second floor. Ed High clung to the ceiling. It hung from the ceiling and waited until there was only one android left. Currently, the android assumes the enemy to be human. Unless it was a special species like a wolf or an insectoid, it was impossible to hang from the ceiling. So, the android didn't consider anything on the ceiling, and it had no choice but to succumb to Ed High's psychic attack, the psychic impact without resistance. Psychic impact was considered the lowest level psychic attack technique, but it could still inflict significant damage on opponents without psychic resistance. If the target was accurately aimed at, it could even destroy the power source of an android. If the android had a shield, Ed High would have failed. If the android had prepared even slightly for psychic power attacks, Ed High's attack would have failed. Psychic impact could be easily blocked even by those with psychic resistance. Unarmed individuals. Don't shoot. Oh no, these are civilians. Be cautious, everyone. The confused police officers hesitated, and I extended my upper arm toward them. Saw-edged tentacles emerged from my palm and wrapped around the android's head, which was beyond the civilian. The sharp saw on the surface of the tentacle was firmly embedded in the small, hard head of the android. Enemy attack detected. The painless android had a Gauss rifle attached to its third arm and aimed it at me, but it was too late. As I pulled my arm back, the android's head, which had been entangled with the tentacle, was pulled out. Intrusion. Requesting backup. What the hell is that? The android behind me recognized my attack faster than the police and sounded an alarm. The police also aimed their Gauss rifles in my direction, albeit belatedly. Tungsten bullets mercilessly rained down on the spot where I had been standing. The civilians who were fleeing late were hit by blind bullets and disintegrated like watercolors in water. The civilian shields had served their purpose well, and now it was time to step back. Damn. I quickly retreated, but perhaps because I had grown in size, I couldn't completely avoid it, and I was hit a few times on the tail. Thanks to my physical enhancement type and various characteristics, there was no significant impact. However, this must have made the enemies realize to some extent how resilient my defenses were. Ordinary humans would have a hard time noticing if I had taken a significant blow during the fight. But androids were different. Unless their power source was removed and they ceased to function, they would meticulously record every detail of their combat with the enemy. The enemies would surely change to special rounds with enhanced penetration. Armor-piercing rounds could damage my external shell. The androids probably instructed them to target my relatively thin arms and tail. I had regenerative properties, so even if my arms and legs were severed, they would regenerate, but it was a slow process. Losing a weapon like my arm, which was the main weapon of a morph, was not a welcome development. So it was best to avoid armor-piercing rounds no matter what. That's why androids are a nuisance. Their autonomous thinking ability was lacking, but their information-gathering capability was superior to humans. Megacore players often used androids for scouting and support. Thanks to them, I had some trouble in the Megacore battles. If you didn't wipe them out in one go, they would transmit all my characteristics, patterns, weaknesses, and so on to the opposing players, which was quite annoying. I have to eliminate them here. The androids that had been eliminated so far were not due to firearms, but rather special attacks. The fact that I was not human would already be stored in the recording devices integrated into the androids. The police might not know, but I had to destroy all the recording devices in these androids. Hiding inside the house, I sent a signal to number 26. ZZZZZZZ, come up and help. Yes, little guy, the big baby is calling Dot. While calling them, the enemies entered the corridor. Perhaps because they knew that the enemies were not regular humans, their movements were much more cautious than before. I shouted loudly in the voice of 112. I'm here. They stopped in their tracks when they heard my voice. Subsequently, the enemies shifted positions to enter the house. The sound of footsteps and the clashing of firearms and equipment suggested agility and a quiet demeanor, almost inaudible if one wasn't close enough. They certainly showed signs of extensive training. Maybe it was unfortunate for them to face me. If they were different enemies, I would have easily subdued them. No, if I weren't a morph, I might not have won this easily. It was Amorphous super sense that allowed me to read the movements of the enemies so easily. I stood by the door, aiming the spine launcher. Is this about right? I adjusted it to hit the target, which was about 20 centimeters above my head, and waited for a moment. When the android came closer to break down the door, I fired the spine. The dull sound was heard as the spine pierced through the door. ZZZ, ZZZ. Ugh, they're shooting. Beyond the small hole in the door, a slightly perforated android's head could be seen, slumping. I pushed against the door with force from my legs. The latch was torn apart as if it were torn tissue, and the android that had been standing in front of the door was shattered by my charge. The police officers who finally saw me up close swallowed their breath. Among the wreckage of the android, I crushed the recording device with my foot and then withdrew my serrated tentacle to wrap it around one police officer's leg. As the tentacle passed over, the white bones were exposed, and one officer fell. 3 other officers aimed their Gauss rifles at me. But I'm not the only monstrous threat they are facing right now. Adhai, who had flown holding on to number 26, pounced on the police officers. Adhai's tentacles covered the heads of the police officers. The transparent tentacles broke the glass of the masks the officers were wearing and penetrated inside. Akuk, stop! The police officer trembled and made bizarre sounds as the red plate at the tip of the tentacle stuck to the officer's face and began to suck blood. The tentacle, making a squelching sound, was clearly seen sucking in the red liquid. The police officer, who had lost a large amount of blood in an instant, was in shock and sat down on the spot. Argug! Other police officers hesitated but kept their Gauss rifles aimed at it high. In the corridor, Number 26 emitted a violet energy that enveloped the police officers' bodies. I grabbed the heads of the individuals held by 26 with one hand each and tore them off. The blood spurting from their necks seemed to float in mid-air, as if defying gravity due to 26's psychic power. At high, which turned one police officer into a mirage, gobbled up the flying blood with its tentacles. ZZZZZZ, well done. Yeah. Easy. Someone watching would likely be shocked and nauseated, but I was proud of the companions who had assisted me brilliantly. I wanted to give them some time to enjoy the spoils, but there were still enemies remaining. This is the first time I've fought, leaving my back to someone else. I had never experienced such a situation while playing as a morph, both in the game and in reality, as I didn't have friends. Fighting like this was a fresh experience for me. In future hunts, if I strategically utilize these guys, it could be quite helpful. Now, all that's left is the androids on the lower floor. Once we take care of them, any obstacles to our escape will be eliminated. The time to savor the spoils will come after the hunt is over. We need to move up. Calm down, 102. We've requested external support, so we have to wait. Damn it, are we going to let that guy have his way the whole time? We should strike before they wipe us out. It's not possible. William, watching the argument between his fellow officers and M01, wasn't pleased. In terms of rank, M01 was higher, so it was normal to follow his orders. The reason the police officers were resisting and not following M01 was because M01 was a machine. Megacorp's deep-seated robot hatred persists. William, having spent a long time in the military, understood why Megacorp's people still harbored animosity towards androids and cyborgs. Star Union. At the time Megacorp was established, many lower-class workers were forcibly conscripted for space colonization. While there were a significant number of androids, they were a minority compared to humans. Tragically, human lives were cheaper than using robots. Amid the countless lives being pushed into the dark void, some colonization ships began to choose a different path. The androids managing the colonization ships began to malfunction and rebelled against the upper capital, using their network to infect other ships' androids. As a result, the scale of the rebellion grew, and not only androids but also ordinary workers joined in. A massive rebellion force led by machines, and eventually even lower-class workers, marked the beginning of the Star Union. The androids of the Star Union argued that, to survive in the harsh environment of space, they needed to replace their bodies with superior technology, and humans voluntarily became cyborgs to adapt. The ideal community they aimed for was one where machines and humans coexisted without discrimination. That's the Star Union's claim. Star Union presented themselves as a just group resisting the corrupt Megacorp, but in reality, it was quite different. The rebellion had its origins in the malfunction of machines from the start. A rebellion led by mad machines was unlikely to go smoothly. The androids of Star Union even turned unwilling laborers into cyborgs. They went so far as to implant chips into their brains, stripping them of free will. After the rebellion, they expanded their influence by attacking other exploration ships and forcibly turning settlers into cyborgs. Naturally, the ordinary citizens of Megacorp didn't welcome Star Union. Who would like those who kidnapped them and turned them into machines by force? Although centuries had passed, the resentment against machines still ran deep in the minds of Megacorp citizens. Anyway, regardless of the historical context, it was not desirable for allies to argue among themselves in such a critical situation. William was the first to calm down the police officers. Hey, everyone calm down. But we are police officers. I understand your concern for our colleagues. but don't forget our mission. Ugh. As William calmly appeased them, the police officers also showed a more composed attitude. William then called M01. Hey, M01. Please, Detective Team Leader. After the Star Union's rebellion, Megacorp had imposed several restrictions when making androids. One of them was to change the android's data recording device to a closed system to prevent accidents from being interconnected. Since the android network had been one of the causes of the rebellion, it was a necessary measure. However, such a restriction was too burdensome, especially in a war where information exchange was critical. Therefore, the commanding androids temporarily had their restrictions lifted. You are right, but the Special Trade Center androids at the TNC Special Trade Center have recently changed their policy for EMP defense. They have applied shielding technology, which limits data transmission via the communication network. I see. William understood that this might be due to the Council. In the Space City, the most dangerous weapon wasn't plasma weapons or state-of-the-art battleships or even the metallic gremlins. It was EMP attacks because in a structure where everything was controlled by machines, there was nothing as threatening as EMP attacks. They raised the EMP protection level in preparation for the Council's arrival, and it seems they also made changes to the androids. So, can we deduce anything from that limited information? What do you mean? I want to make sure that the target may not be human. I want to verify. Do you mean to say the target could be a different intelligent being? When 112 was taken away, I briefly saw him, and he didn't look human. He didn't look human. He had an appearance more akin to a monster or a beast. I see. I will check. M01's eyes lit up green when he said that. It indicated that he was in the process of decrypting the information sent by the androids. Commanding androids could remotely access the data stored by subordinate androids, but during this access, they became completely vulnerable, as intentionally designed by Megacorp. What a foolish restriction. William thought about how many soldiers had suffered due to this damned restriction. While William was lost in thought, M01, who had finished decrypting, spoke up. As you mentioned, it is speculated that it is something beyond a typical human. Tell me more. M06 on the first floor and M05 in the fifth floor corridor both suffered high-penetration attacks. Like a Gauss rifle? No. M05 had its data storage device destroyed by projectiles thinner than tungsten rounds, and M06's power source was estimated to be destroyed by psychic attacks. Because they received fragmented information, M01 used the term speculated instead of analyzed. However, William trusted M01's words since he knew that androids' analytical capabilities surpassed those of humans. So, it's someone who can use psychic power and has high-penetration weapons. Then what happened to M03, who went upstairs with M05? M03 was destroyed by an attack from an undocumented biological entity. What does that mean? After expanding the scope to include registered biological entities, the weapon that destroyed M03's data storage device shows a 90% similarity in form to the tentacles of a large extraterrestrial cephalopod species discovered in the deep sea of E101 planet. William was familiar with E101 planet. It was a water-covered planet where he had heard Mars's prime capitals were keenly interested. There shouldn't be any sea monsters here. So, is the enemy a Hulk mutant? There is no model with the genetic transplant of the particular biological entity among Hulk mutants. Is it a new species, or perhaps an unknown one to us? Considering it's believed to be an intelligent entity, it was difficult to classify the enemy as a wild animal. It seemed more plausible to view it as a yet-to-be-revealed prototype of the Hulk mutant. Could it be that the Eugen family is trying to challenge TNC? The technology for creating Hulk mutants was partially monopolized by the Eugen family, so William's speculation wasn't entirely baseless. He suspected that there might be power struggles among the top capitals during the council. If the mysterious adversary had read his thoughts, the process might have been entirely wrong, but the result would have been accurate, he thought. Whether M01 misunderstood William's thoughts or not, he added, "You don't have to worry. Even if everyone here is wiped out, The information will be safely transmitted to Earth's Central Security Team. When applying camouflage technology, we also upgraded our data storage devices to 2, so unless the enemy completely destroys us, the information won't be damaged. That's fortunate. William smiled bitterly at the android's oblivious comment. Unlike androids, who had no concept of death, he had no desire to die here. He spoke his thoughts to M01. I agree with waiting for reinforcements, but before that, the enemy might counterattack. It's better to be prepared. I concur with that suggestion. Administering the enhancer would be wise. While upgrades have reduced side effects, are you sure it's safe? It's better than dying. Understood. Authorization granted for enhancer administration. With M01's authorization, William and the 4 police officers present at the scene received the enhancer. Having taken the enhancer after a long time, William shivered slightly from the familiar discomfort and relief. Looking at the similar expressions on the faces of the other officers, it seemed they felt no different. Then, one of the armed police officers received a call on his communication device. It's a communication from 112. I need to answer it. Just a moment. I'll take it. M01 received the communication device from the police officer's hand and pressed the button. Aren't they coming up? I was hiding on the stairs, trying to eliminate the enemies as they ascended, but I couldn't even catch a glimpse of them. Are they buying time? If they're calling for reinforcement from over there and waiting, it's not a pleasant situation. They might get reinforcements, but I won't. The longer this takes, the worse it is for my side. Should I take the initiative from my side? Currently, there are 9 enemies detected by my senses. 3 androids and 6 police officers. 1 android and 1 police officer are waiting on the first floor, while the rest are all on the second floor. If they gather, I could sweep them all at once. My most powerful weapon is the monster's tentacle. It's a trait created by fusing the claws and psychic power mechanism from White Galagon's genes, which were transplanted into my body. Until now, I've only used it with the enhanced psychic power mechanism, but that's not the true potential of this trait. Monster's tentacle inherits and enhances the existing psychic power mechanism trait. Can use psychic power. Asterisk note, use the power of the dragon carefully. Just like at High, the blue Galagon used the tentacles for psychic impact. All Galagons use their tentacles in their mouths for psychic abilities. While it's a trait I couldn't have naturally as the tentacle of the dragon, I obtained an organ that looks exactly the same through fusion. I should be able to use psychic breath. The mentioned psychic power and the power of the dragon in the text box refer to the White Galagon's unique ability, the psychic breath. As the text box warned, the psychic breath is a powerful ability inspired by the heat rays shot by the protagonists of classic Japanese monster movies. In the original, I could easily take down this apartment, but I can't produce that level of output. Of course, I should be able to sweep away the enemies in the corridor with a single blow, but the problem is the enemies on the first floor. The problem is the ones on the first floor. Psychic breath consumes a massive amount of energy, leaving me vulnerable immediately after use. If the enemies on the first floor decide to attack as I unleash the psychic breath, I won't have a way to defend myself. Let's keep the monster's tentacle as a trump card. I decided to turn on the communication device one last time to lure the enemies out. This is M01. Speak. 112. It's torturing me. Please, please help me. Is the one torturing you a human? The android asked me with a dry tone. Is it human? Did they assume I was human and not fight me as a result? Why the sudden question? Do they know I'm not human? As far as I know, Megacorp androids can't share information with each other. By design, Megacorp prohibits information sharing among robots due to a past robot uprising. They might have seen me when I captured the police. It's possible. Upon reflection, one of the police officers seemed to have kept an eye on me until the end. It was a very brief moment, and it was dark, so I assumed they couldn't see me, but maybe that wasn't the case. While I was pondering this, the android on the other side continued. Based on your late response, there's a greater than 70% chance that you are not number 112. From now on, we will consider number 112 to be martyred. With that, the android disconnected. Certainly, The android is quick on the uptake, as even with a slightly delayed response due to my thinking, it immediately realized that I'm not 112. This kind of situation hasn't happened in a while. In the game, the mimicry mechanism was a unique attribute I possessed. So many players fell for it. However, as time went on and I became more famous, players devised their own countermeasures. They checked speech habits or speaking styles, asked for information only known to colleagues, and used various methods to identify me. Well, I can't deceive them. I resolved to destroy the communication device. The method of unsettling the enemies and then launching a surprise attack is now difficult to use. Is the only option left is a direct confrontation? Going down and attacking the enemies head-on. Frankly, it's not my preferred method. They're probably watching me closely from the other side. Unluckily, the police who receive the enhancer are probably waiting for me. With upgraded combat suits and the effects of the enhancer, they're even more formidable. Armed with Gauss rifles and enhanced by the enhancer, they're not to be underestimated. I might have to prepare to lose an arm or a leg. Of course, I have no intention of running away. At the very least, I need to take care of all the ones on the second floor. They know I can mimic the voice of the monster. After all, I should try a proper pincer attack this time. Just because I took down one of the enemies doesn't mean I'm going to be hunted down. They might have noticed something, but they still don't know that we're a group of 3. I explained the plan to the others and then stood up. Well, let's go. This time, I need to have faith in my tough exterior and the combat abilities of the group. Big baby, be careful, Dot. Danger. Careful. ZZZZ, you too. As I mentioned in advance, I sent the guys first. We've succeeded without any problems before, so we should succeed easily this time too. I need to do well. With them dispatched, all that's left for me is to enter. So which route should I take? There are a total of 3 routes available right now. There are paths leading down to both ends of the corridors and a route along the outer wall of the corridor. They're probably monitoring the corridor. The space from the stairs to the corridor is very limited, and my body isn't as small as before, so the moment I enter, it will turn into a beehive. Even with the physical enhancement type, it's difficult to come out unscathed from a concentrated barrage of tungsten rounds. Going along the outer wall won't be easy either. This method has already been used once, so it's highly likely they'll be cautious. If the police have used awakening agents, they'll quickly detect my attack thanks to heightened senses. Or should I go through the lower house as I did earlier, using the window to descend and launching an attack from the second floor house? It's the same method I used when secretly abducting Police Officer 106. It's a decent method, but if the enemy can predict my attack, the effectiveness will be diminished. The strategy route itself is more complex compared to other routes, which increases the risk of being discovered by the androids along the way. It might be better if I divert their attention. Maybe there's no good method. Oh, as I was thinking about it, I suddenly had a good idea. I completely forgot about this since I got here. I should try using the useful attribute I often used on the research ship again. I moved as quietly as possible and descended to the 3rd floor. Beyond the concrete floor of the corridor, I could feel the movements of the enemies. The faint electromagnetic waves emitted by electronic devices, the unique scent of artificial skin mixed with rubber and iron, the stillness of their bodies. It was all intermingled with the scent of sweat, the movement of muscles that had swollen thicker than usual, and the rapid heartbeat. It was a dual performance created by both machines and humans. The police have used enhancers. A surging power turned into heat, oozing through the skin and clothing. When hit with the enhancer, your physical abilities increase, and your senses become as sharp as an animal's. If I had gone downstairs without any preparation, the police would have detected it immediately and attacked me. Thank goodness. Enhanced senses don't mean your cognitive abilities expand. The enemies likely expect me to enter from the end of the corridor or the exterior wall, not that I'd attack from the ceiling. Judging by the positions of the enemies, the androids are guarding the front and rear, while the 5 humans are stationed in the middle, just like the androids, splitting their focus between the front and back. I inflicted wounds all over my body with the extended claws on my battle arm, causing my exterior to crack, and black blood flowed from within. I need a lot of blood. To melt the thick floor, I repeatedly inflicted fresh wounds on the healed areas. Once I judged that the floor had melted sufficiently, I made a deep cut in the wound. Blood gushed out like a fountain from my wound and scattered all over the corridor floor. It's done. In a few minutes, a large hole would be created in the floor, and the acidic blood would drip down beneath it. I made sure the acidic blood was properly melting the floor, and then opened the nearby door and leaped into the house. Swiftly traversing the house, I opened the window and crawled down to the lower floor. Hey, it's acidic. Everyone, be careful. The enemies were perplexed as they saw the acidic blood pouring down from above. By now, I had already entered the lower house. The door to the house that leads to the corridor was firmly blocking my way. I exerted all my strength and pushed the door directly outward. With a loud crash, the door was pushed out into the corridor, crushing the police officer who had been standing in front of it. Blood splattered out through the gap in the door and spilled onto the corridor. Ugh, it's an enemy attack. The enemy probably didn't know I could strike both the ceiling and the side at the same time. An android with M01 written on its head quickly recognized me and raised a Gauss rifle. As the muzzle was about to point at me, I grabbed the head of the police officer next to me and pulled him toward me. The android, programmed not to shoot a comrade, hesitated for a moment but then immediately fired at me. As expected, it's an android. Even though he's using a person as a shield, he's precisely targeting only me. The pain from the area where I was hit by the bullet started to throb. In the meantime, other police officers also managed to break free from their confusion and regrouped. Except for the police officer I was holding on to, the rest had distanced themselves from me. Everyone, regular bullets are ineffective. Switch to armor-piercing rounds. I don't know if he's the commander, but while 2 other police officers were shooting at me, the remaining 2 quickly switched their ammunition. The Gauss rifles the police officers were carrying transformed with mechanical sounds to match the armor-piercing rounds. This is bad. I needed cover, so I went back into the house. Behind me, armor-piercing rounds pierced through the wall. One of them passed through my tail. Even walls can't stop armor-piercing rounds. I didn't plan to just stand there, so I shook my bleeding tail vigorously. Black drops of blood splattered and stuck to the bodies of the police officers who followed. Damn, his blood has an acidic effect. Amidst the staggering police officers, I moved through the window to the neighboring house. Ugh, armor-piercing rounds seem more effective than in the game. On the other side of the wall, I heard the sound of the police officers searching the bathroom and kitchen. Ugh, ugh, ugh. A police officer, held in my hand, struggled to get free while I checked the tail wound. Thanks to the enhancer, the police officer's strength was by no means weak, but being held by the head, they couldn't exert much force. I applied more pressure quietly to make them stop. When my hook-like claws scratched his helmet, it made a chilling sound, and the police officer immediately quieted down. I should make more use of this guy. I activated the parasitic colony on my lower right arm. It's a level 5, 1 level higher than Sanders. In the game, level 5 didn't let you do much, but I wonder how it'll work in reality. A creature resembling a black centipede sprang out from the hole of the parasitic colony and attached itself to the police officer's body. Oh, what is this? Stop it. The police officer panicked and writhed, but because I had a hold of his head, his resistance was extremely limited. I grabbed the creature, trying to escape with my fingers to bring it to his face. Just as the creature was about to crawl into his nostril, a loud noise accompanied the wall collapsing. Target located. An android with M02 engraved on his head broke through the wall. It was a combat-specialized android, with gauntlets attached to both arms except for the third arm. As soon as M02 spotted me, he punched my head. I quickly grabbed his wrist with my battle arm, but at the same time, a metal spike shot out from his head towards mine. The sound of metal contacting metal echoed as sparks flew from my head's exterior. To prevent him from impaling me with the spike, I extended my serrated tentacle. The serrated tentacle swept across M02's face. The artificial skin covering his face, riddled with saw teeth, was all stripped away, and the metal skeleton inside was severely damaged. Error detected. Requesting support. I will provide support. M01, who had appeared from behind, wrested the Gauss rifle from my hands. The still recovering tentacle was mercilessly torn by the armor-piercing rounds. The damage was limited to the tentacle, but I felt pain throughout my arm. I retracted the remaining tentacle while hiding behind M02. Malfunction. Attack required. M02, you've done well until now. M01, without paying attention to my actions, aimed the gun at M02 and me with the intent to kill. M02, with inferior defense compared to me, became a sitting duck in seconds. That's why I hate androids. Not being mentally shaken, my usual tactics like feints and ambushes were ineffective. I used the deactivated M02 as a shield and aimed my spine projectile organ at the third arm of M01. This damn monster. Just as I was about to fire, the police officers arrived to support M01. Over the debris of the broken wall, a barrage of armor-piercing rounds rained towards me. I just need to shoot this and get out. While my head and chest, the most fortified parts, remained unscathed, other areas didn't. My exterior has its limits to withstand bullets. While my limbs were pierced by bullets, I managed to fire the spine bone. A spine bone shot from my lower left arm's tip swiftly flew and destroyed the Gauss rifle attached to M01's third arm. Weapons are damaged. While the android was momentarily staggering, I hurled a police officer lying on the ground at them. Infected by parasites, he should be able to hinder their movements, at least to some extent. Cease fire, everyone. As expected, when their colleagues came flying, the police officers immediately ceased fire. I sent a mental message to the parasite to go wild, and then dashed out of the house. Hey, are you okay? 103. Snap out of it. Ugh. I rushed down the corridor towards where they would be waiting for me by now, after everything was finished. Ugh, AF. 103. My head. 103 rolled on the ground, clutching his head. The police officers hurriedly restrained him. It wasn't easy to calm him down, given that he was a well-built adult man in a reinforced state. Please calm down. For the love of God. Someone get this out. While other police officers held him, William quickly operated the terminal attached to 103's wrist. The treatment within the reinforced suit injected into 103's body, but his condition showed no improvement. What is this? It's not poison. It's suspected to be a virus or some tiny organisms that have infiltrated the brain. M01 answered William's question. With its third arm destroyed, M01 had collected and was wearing the power bunker gauntlet that M02 had used. What can we do about it? I'm not a medical android, so I can't treat it. We need to transfer him to the hospital immediately. Damn it. William uttered a string of curses. I don't know who Sander had dealings with, but he's a formidable presence that surpasses the Hulk mutant by far. His array of attack methods is incredibly diverse, and what's even scarier is that he knows how to use them effectively. Damn it. M01, try something, anything. We need to track the target. The target has been identified as an extremely dangerous combat organism. If the target hides in another apartment, we can expect severe casualties. Damn it, we can't leave him like this. While the police and androids argued about what to do with 103, his condition deteriorated rapidly. I'm sorry. 103? Suddenly, 103's expression changed drastically, and he jumped up from his seat. He then shot the police officer holding on to him with the Gauss rifle. 105, 105, with a hole in his abdomen, collapsed, coughing up blood. 103, who had just shot his colleague, was shedding tears but had a strangely twisted smile. Hee. I should have done this earlier. Hee. 103, snap out of it. 103 is in a poor condition. Judging that he is being controlled by the parasite, I will subdue him. M01 approached 103. The mentally unstable police officer turned his Gauss rifle towards M01 to shoot, but he was too slow. M01 struck the back of 103's neck, causing him to lose consciousness. Subdued. 105, don't lose consciousness. Administer the treatment. Please. William quickly administered the treatment to 105, but honestly, it didn't look promising. The treatment isn't a panacea, so unless they get him to the hospital immediately, 105 has no chance of survival. William got up, leaving 105 unconscious. With 105, who had a hole in his abdomen, and the unconscious 103, only 102, William, and M01 remained in this place. M01, the situation is not good. Call for the androids and police officers on the first floor immediately. Understood. If the three of them were to confront Sander like this, they would be wiped out. If he were to bring out some new attack method, they would undoubtedly be annihilated. M01 agreed with William this time and connected the communicator. This is M01. We need those on the first floor to come up. BZZT. This is M01. Repeating, everyone on the first floor, please come upstairs. BZZT. M01 repeated the same message, but all they received through the communication device was static. It was clear what that noise meant. There's not just one. Only now did William realize it. While the creature had been buying time, its comrades were lying in wait on the first floor, targeting the androids and the police. It appears the creature executed a pincer movement. Note, the pincer movement is a tactic in which forces attack both flanks, sides, of an enemy formation at the same time. The android's words drove the point home. They had fallen into a trap prepared by unknown entities. They were on the stairs leading down to the first floor. Thankfully, both of them didn't appear to have any significant injuries. ZZZZZZ, well done. Big baby, you're bleeding. Number 26 expressed concern when it saw my body riddled with holes. It tried to extend its tentacles to lick my wounds, but I quickly withdrew. ZZZ, my blood is dangerous. I gestured towards the droplets of blood on the floor. The creature in front of me, with a peculiar nod, seemed to understand. Understood. ZZS. Before the enemies could catch up, I checked my body. The tentacles were severely damaged and would take more than an hour to recover. The penetrated areas were healing as new flesh grew, but it would take about 10 minutes to fully repair. The injuries are worse than I thought, but the operation went well. There were only 2 police officers and 1 android left as enemies. Thanks to the police officer controlled by the parasite who shot his own colleague, we had 1 less enemy to deal with. Unfortunately, the android quickly dealt with them, so we couldn't expect more significant results. There are 3 enemies left. Ideally, we would face them one-on-one, but that wasn't possible. The first floor enemies weren't foolish. By now, they would have realized we weren't alone and would come prepared. I have regenerative abilities, but they don't. Unlike me, number 26, and at high won't recover from critical injuries. A gunshot wound is potentially fatal, and if it's severe, they could die. I might have superior regenerative abilities, but we can't tell whether they have that trait or not, so we can't rush into a fight. Should I use the monster's tentacles? The enemies on the first floor have been taken care of, and the remaining enemies are gathered on the second floor. They can't move freely like me, so they'll likely come through the corridor. If I use the monster's tentacles to fire a psychic breath in the corridor, the enemies won't be able to escape total annihilation. The downside is that it's impossible to deal with unexpected situations. After using the psychic breath, I'll be temporarily incapacitated. It lasts roughly between 3 to 5 minutes. The enemies are also in a disadvantageous position, so they probably requested reinforcements earlier. Delaying further would make things harder when the enemies increase. The new reinforcements will likely be several times greater. With my current abilities, it won't be easy to annihilate all of them. Let's use the monster's tentacles. Coincidentally, the enemies are approaching, following the traces of acidic blood on the floor. Before welcoming them, I instructed number 26 and at high. ZZZZ. I'll be momentarily weakened after this attack. ZZZZ. You'll have to protect me this time. Big baby, are you growing again? ZZZ. No, it's different this time. Got it. I'll protect the big baby. I don't understand. The big baby is a baby, so he takes naps sometimes. Understood. It's not really a nap, but there's probably no need to explain. I pushed them back and extended my head down the hallway to assess the enemies. As soon as anything popped out, they fired armor-piercing rounds. Thanks to the strong exterior of my head, it didn't turn into a beehive, but the pain didn't entirely go away. I need a better armor strategy. Several possible gene essences that could be obtained in this city come to mind, but right now, I'm in the middle of a battle. Clearing my mind, I used the walls and the outer shell of my head as cover, firing controlled bone shots at the enemies. Damn it! Please use me as cover for shooting. I know. The police officers cursed as the spines flew towards them. The androids, having lost their ranged weapons, were now using the power bunker to break through the concrete wall and use it as cover. It seemed like a good idea, but it was clear that our opponent was formidable. The cover was meaningless against psychic breath. I activated the monster's tentacle, and the long tentacle that reached my shoulder began to move slowly. In an instant, I felt a sudden depletion of energy throughout my body, which almost made me collapse in place. The glossy exterior I had moments ago turned pale, and the powerful tail that had been at its peak collapsed onto the ground. This consumes an enormous amount of energy. It felt like all the energy that had been flowing through my entire body had been sucked into my head. From my claws, tail, 4 combat arms, even the little arm on my chest, all the strength was drawn in, and the tentacle that had absorbed almost all of my power shone with a distinct purple hue. There's so much psychic power concentrated at the end of the tentacle that even a human with limited psychic detection abilities could feel it. The tentacles, which had accumulated an immense amount of energy to the point where the air crackled, all pointed forward and concentrated their ends. High-level psychic power detected. Evacuate immediately. What? The purple radiance flowing from the tentacle tips converged in midair. The enemies desperately tried to retreat, but it was too late. In the dark corridor, a subtle purple glow permeated, and the gathered energy in midair was finally released. A pure psychic energy beam raced through the corridor. The concrete wall that covered half of my body disappeared without a trace, and any spot touched by the energy beam turned into the same state. There was no sound. Psychic power didn't make any noise. The only noise came later as the debris of the destroyed corridor collapsed. Nothing remained in the wake of the violet storm. The android, along with the wall he was holding, literally turned to dust, and the police officer who activated a shield belatedly had half his body vanished, collapsing to the ground. However, the police officer who had been standing by the outer wall of the building on the second floor managed to survive, thanks to the shield deflecting him out of the apartment. He fell from the second floor, but the effects of the enhancer quickly had him back on his feet. I wanted to chase after him as he tried to escape, but my body wouldn't respond. You amazing, great young one. As I listened to High's thoughts expressing awe at the majesty of psychic breath, I lost consciousness right there. Damn it. This is insane. It doesn't make any sense. William, with a partially broken leg, repeated the same words as he desperately tried to escape. The unimaginable reality left him unable to regain his composure. We need the military. The idea that he was dealing with a new recruit was beyond absurd. How arrogant was this judgment? This guy was a monster, an evil force ready to turn the city into ashes. They should prepare not for a council, but to deploy the entire defense fleet to the residential zone. Is it crazy to think that the Eugen family controls such a monster? He had completely misjudged it. Sander hadn't traded with that creature. Maybe he was a slave, manipulated by the parasitic beings that controlled the police. It doesn't matter how many victims there are. We have to kill him. William, who had completely lost his mind, shouted, making more radical statements than he would ever consider in his right mind. He was always a rational person, but the human mind has its limits. Faced with an unbearable presence, everything becomes futile. As he continued to limp away, William saw police buses approaching in the distance. 6 of them? There's no way he can be stopped with that many armed police buses. Stop! A man in reinforced armor emerged onto the road, causing the police buses to come to a halt. An android disembarked from one of the buses and supported him. We need to confirm your identity. Are you Detective Team Leader William? Don't go. You mustn't go under any circumstances. Assessing the chaotic situation. Considering the difficulty of continuing the battle, we will proceed to transport you to the hospital. Listen to me. If you go like this, we're all going to die. The android repeatedly restrained William, who only kept saying that they would all die. The unconscious William was loaded onto the bus, and it departed once again. When they arrived at the apartment, the target was nowhere to be seen. All that remained were the broken android remains, human debris, police officers with abdominal injuries, and unconscious police officers strewn across the scene. Are you awake? Where am I? William, as he opened his eyes, looked around. He was inside a medical capsule. Behind the semi-transparent glass of the capsule, a medical android nodded politely to him. Various electronic devices were emitting light behind the android, and in the hallway outside, he could see nurses and other androids rushing around. A hospital. That's correct. What about the others? What about the mission? Is everyone safe? When support forces entered Apartment Complex C, Building 3, the target had already escaped. Therefore, there were no additional casualties. William felt a profound sense of numbness hearing the android's words. Letting him get away was an unforgivable mistake. You don't need to worry. We've already collected the secondary memory storage devices of the androids. The global security team will soon locate the target. Please rest assured. Even with the android's words, William couldn't find peace of mind. After all, M01, the android who had stored all the memories, had vanished without a trace, erased by the enemy's powerful psychic attack. The memories of the other androids were fragmented, and it remained uncertain whether the higher-ups would truly understand the extent of the threat posed by the target. Therefore, the only one who had retained complete memories was William himself. I have a message to convey to the higher-ups right now. You're in the middle of treatment. Discharge is not possible. Darn it. It's urgent. It's not possible. You must remain stable until at least tomorrow. Hey, listen to me. Saying that, the android operated a device next to the capsule. Then, an automatic injection of medication entered William's arm through a tube. William tried to remove the syringe, but due to the rapid onset of drowsiness caused by the medication, he once again lost consciousness. How much time had passed? He wondered as he woke up again. Whoa! The hospital room was dark, suggesting it might be nighttime. Besides William, there was someone else in the room. When he pressed a button on the device, there was a sound of air escaping, and the capsule's lid opened. Who are you? I'm from higher-ups. Would you be fine to report immediately? No problem. William was awakened, and the capsule was opened by his interlocutor, who happened to be a police officer. Wearing a police uniform and having a bandage around his neck were the only noteworthy aspects about him. Where have I seen him before? William had an excellent memory when it came to people, considering his work on the detective team. Although he didn't recognize the man's face, his physique seemed familiar. He's not from the Harbor District, but where have I seen him? He had met this person recently. We have a car waiting outside. Follow me. Okay, just let me grab my things. In any case, he had to report to the higher-ups quickly, so William only gathered a few belongings and followed the man. During their journey, there were medical androids working the night shift who tried to stop them, but they encountered no issues. The individual guiding William had displayed his police electronic badge and provided identification, which was sufficient to allow them to proceed. Once they reached the parking lot outside the hospital, the police officer pressed a button on his car key. The headlights of a regular car, not a police car, blinked in the distance. Get in. Seating himself in the driver's seat, the police officer said nothing more. Why aren't we in a police car if we're going to report to the higher-ups? William felt puzzled. It appeared that they were not currently carrying out official police duties. The officer's attitude indicated a lack of interest in potentially deceiving him for nefarious purposes. William reached into his pocket and grasped the laser pistol he had concealed. The electronic badge he showed to the androids is different, but I also have one. The badge the officer had displayed was different in format, but William possessed the same kind. This electronic badge, used by law enforcement authorities, contained a unique ID and pattern that made replication or forgery impossible. Additionally, if someone else attempted to use the badge for identification, alarms would immediately sound, rendering theft and use by others unfeasible. Although the officer's behavior was unusual, as long as he held the badge, William was certain he was indeed a police officer. After a brief moment of contemplation, he eventually got into the car. The police vehicle, with William on board, left the dimly lit parking lot behind. Leaving the brightly lit hospital behind them, the car navigated the midnight roads. The car ride was silent. The police officer simply focused on driving, while William continued to wonder about the identity of his companion. If the last person I saw from the global security team was, could this be an armed policeman? We've arrived. William, who had just thought of asking a question, saw that the car had stopped. Looking outside, he realized that they were not in the administrative district. A quiet street with no one in sight, dark alleys, and a nearby manhole. This is the border between zones, right? It was a place William was familiar with, serving as the border between the residential and harbor districts. Because it straddled both areas, the respective security teams often avoided patrolling here, making it ironically a place where crimes happened if people forgot about it. There were no cameras or streetlights. Get out. What is this all about? Quickly, William drew his laser pistol and aimed it at the officer's throat. Now he remembered. The person with him was one of the armed police officers who had been dispatched to capture the monster at apartment C3. At that time, he had been wearing a helmet and a mask, preventing William from seeing his face clearly, but now he recognized him. Get out, and you'll find out everything. What do you mean? The officer, or rather, number 103, didn't offer any resistance. He just kept repeating that William would find out everything once he got out. What could it be? William had seen what had happened to number 103. He had shot his own colleague under the influence of an unknown organism. I'm sorry, Captain. What? It's already too late. In the dark car, he turned his head towards William and chuckled. Number 103 was looking at William's face, or more precisely, at what was behind him. Behind? Before William could turn to look, it was too late. The sound of the passenger window breaking accompanied a sharp object piercing William's neck from behind. As soon as he felt a stinging pain, he realized his entire body was paralyzed. He couldn't move a muscle, not even his fingers to squeeze the trigger on his laser pistol. Then a powerful force pulled him out of the car. He was thrown to the ground, but there was no pain. Finally, William came face to face with it. For thick toes that resembled hooves at a glance, reverse joints that seemed completely different from humans, and muscular layers to support the heavy body. A long, thick tail that seemed like it could be used as a belt dangled near the hip area. The legs were covered in armor-like outer skin from the waist to the chest. Small arms sprouted from the chest area. The creature had more than just arms. In addition to what would be equivalent to human arms, there were two pairs of arms positioned at the shoulders and armpits. While they resembled the smaller arms, they were much larger in size. Among the arms, the one beneath the left arm was uniquely different, featuring a long, rod-like structure in place of a hand. The fingers attached to the ends of the other arms numbered 4, and their nails were hook-like and sharp, making them appear highly threatening. Up to this point, the creature's appearance was already nightmarish. But what truly horrified William was its head. The head was reminiscent of reptilian creatures, but with 2 horns, an outer covering that resembled a helmet encompassing the entire head, and a cluster of tentacles at the back of the head. This creature could by no means be considered typical in any sense. Number 103 got out of the car and knelt before the creature. I've brought him as ordered. The creature briefly glanced at him, then turned its gaze back to William. The creature opened its mouth, revealing sharp teeth. I never miss my prey. The voice that flowed from the creature's mouth was eerily familiar. It was the voice of 112, one of the police officers who had entered the building during the operation. As the creature's head approached, William let out a scream. However, there was no one to hear his scream except for himself. Samuel J. Sung, the head of the Earth Central Security Team's armed police force, was having a headache. It was all because of the young journalist sitting across from his desk. Her name was Kevin, a senior reporter from the Daily Mars branch located in the commercial district. I'd like to ask the team leader, who is the chief person in charge, about the recent riot incident in the residential district and the reasons behind it. I've already told you, I can't talk about that. You should ask the residential or harbor district for information about it. They told me to come see you, the head of the armed police team in charge of the operation. If you're not the one in charge, then who is? Oh, is it one of those secretaries running around outside? Jae-sung felt irritation rise at her impertinent tone, but he couldn't speak to her rashly. The Daily Mars was operated by the Zhao family, one of the noble capital families, and it was less than a week until the council. He was aware that the noble capital and prime capital families were constantly at odds, and as a third capitalian himself, if he caused trouble with a media outlet operated by prime capital, Layla would likely personally send him to the entertainment district. Do I have to handle this as well? Jae-sung had a pile of urgent tasks to handle, but the eccentric woman had no intention of leaving. It seemed like she wouldn't budge until he provided some information, so Jae-sung eventually gave in. I'll ask again. In the residential zone. Enough. I get it. I'll tell you the name of one of the operation survivors, and you can inquire with them. Dealing with a strange name, he was the first to report this incident to the Harbor District Detective Team, so he should know best. Kevin, seeing the pleading look in Jae-sung's eyes, nodded. Having grilled him for 2 hours, she was fairly confident that the information she had was likely accurate. If it turns out to be a lie, you can expect our article tomorrow. In response to her warning, Jae-sung glared at her and remained silent. Kevin smiled provocatively and left the office. The Harbor District then, Kevin left the building and turned off her communication device. Oh wait, could you tell me about the detective who participated in the last operation in the residential district? What? No, it's not about that. I just want to ask something. Yeah. You're on vacation today? Where? Uh-huh. Thanks. After turning off her communication device, she headed to the subway. Even though it was well past the morning rush hour, the station was quite crowded. As a city built above space, private vehicles were only allowed for government officials. Special-purpose vehicles could be used by hospitals, police, and other similar organizations. As a result, the subway stations were always crowded like this until it closed at 11 p.m. Kevin arrived at a subway station located in the residential district's administrative area. The destination the informant provided was not far from the station. Clean and colorful houses lined the streets, paved with marble. Compared to other districts, it looked luxurious. Kevin whistled in amazement. Upon arriving at her destination, after walking along the marble-paved sidewalk, she looked around the house before pressing the doorbell. The subject's house was clean, like the others, with one key difference. Every window was covered with curtains. It was as if they didn't want anyone peering inside. It might become a big scoop, so I can't afford to miss it. Kevin was a typical megacorp reporter. In other words, she didn't care at all about what her interviewee thought, as long as it served her scoop and promotion. If they're in a mentally difficult state, all the better. They would spill everything as soon as she asked. With a fake smile on her face, Kevin pressed the doorbell firmly. She waited for a response, but there was none. Seeing a car parked in the private parking lot, it was clear that the subject was at home. Kevin pressed the doorbell again. Still no response, but she didn't mind. She could keep pressing it until they came out. After 10 minutes of continuous ringing, a sound finally came from inside. Footsteps approached, and the door opened a moment later. The man who opened the door could be described as a living skeleton. Kevin extended her hand to the man, who looked like a terminally ill cancer patient. Hello, team leader. I'm Kevin, a senior reporter from Daily Mars. You're detective team leader William, right? William scanned her from head to toe with sharp eyes. He tried to close the door immediately, but Kevin had already placed her foot in front of it, expecting him to do so. Without success in closing the door, William finally spoke. What do you want? I'd like to ask about the disturbance in the residential zone. I have nothing to say. There were quite a few casualties during that operation. I'm curious about the cause and who you were chasing. It would be great if you could cooperate for the sake of Megacorp citizens, right to know. I'm not obligated to answer. If you don't answer, Then I'll have no choice but to write an article based on limited investigative material. In other words, she threatened to fill the story with unfavorable content. William's expression twisted in clear frustration. It was a fierce, wounded wolf-like look, but she showed no fear at all. The standoff ended with a sigh from William. In a tone devoid of any irritation, he asked her, "What exactly do you want? It's a bit awkward to discuss it here. Can we go inside and talk?" Contrary to her words, she entered the house without waiting for William's response. The atmosphere inside is quite different from the outside. As Kevin had described, the inside of the house was a complete mess. Unwashed clothes, leftover food dishes, and other items were scattered around haphazardly. To make matters worse, it seemed like the place hadn't been ventilated for a while, as there was a nauseating and unpleasant odor. "Ask your questions quickly. I'm busy." Kevin sat on a messy chair as if it were her own home. She took out a small recorder and gestured to William if it was all right, and he waved his hand as if saying, "Go ahead." "Well, let's start with an overview of the operation in the residential district." The interview lasted for over an hour. William, initially gruff, gradually answered most of her questions. However, despite his cooperative attitude, as the interview went on, William's condition deteriorated. He took some pills several times during the conversation. The pills he took were known to be the most potent painkillers available, and Kevin was aware of their strength. There doesn't seem to be any obvious physical trauma. It's not even an antidepressant for PTSD, she thought. Even after taking the pills, he continued to press his temples with both hands. He pressed so hard that blood was almost oozing from his temples. The interviewee was clearly in distress, but she had no intention of stopping the interview. If he died during the interview, it would only add more sensation to the story from her perspective. Why does he keep looking at the watch? William frequently checked his watch, which seemed unnatural. According to the grapevine, he was currently on vacation. Despite appearing to have nothing urgent, he seemed extremely agitated. Could this be a big scoop? An interview is not just about answering questions. The subject's behavior and reactions to questions can also be a valuable part of the story. She silently celebrated the hunch of a possible big story. As the interview was about to conclude, she asked William one final question. "You mentioned that this person, Sander, is already deceased. Do you have any information about the perpetrator who is dealing with him?" For the first time after the interview, William remained silent. Kevin didn't miss the fleeting reaction. When she asked about the perpetrator, he subtly trembled around his eyes. It indicated that he knew something about the criminal. "I'll ask again. About the one who was dealing with." "Hey, yes. I can't answer this. Not for my sake, but for yours. If it's a threat against me, be it Daily Mass or Prime Capital Zhao family, you should never underestimate them." "For my sake? What does that mean?" She didn't quite understand, but it seemed like William was being sincere. "If you're trying to threaten me, remember, Daily Mass, or even the Prime Capital Zhao family, will never forgive you." Prime Capital? Can such useless entities really protect you? Be careful. Now that you've entered this house, I'm not sure if my warning will mean anything to you, but... With those words, William stood up, walked to the door, and stood there silently. T was a gesture that meant, "It's all over, leave." Kevin recalled all the information she had gathered during the interview. She had already achieved her goals. There was no need to stay in this dirty house any longer. "Thank you for cooperating with the interview, Detective Team Leader William." William, with an expression that said there was no need for unnecessary chatter, subtly indicated that she should leave. As she was heading out, just before William closed the door, he offered one last piece of advice. "You said your name is Kevin, right? It's better not to go out alone at night." "What are you talking about?" Without waiting for a reply, William closed the door. What nonsense is this? Kevin thought, irritated by what she perceived as a veiled threat. She was about to press the doorbell to confront him when her communication device rang. "It's the director. It must be to report on today's interview." "Yes, director. The interview is finished now." "What? Who am I?" Of course, it was a success. Yes, I'll head there right away." She gave up on voicing her complaints, answered the call, and ran back to the subway station. Unbeknownst to her, Someone was watching her from within the house. It was William, who had been inside the house. He had been observing her until she disappeared and then picked up his communication device. Looks like this is about done. I had been crouching all day, but now I stood up. The mucus that had dried on my outer shell fell off as dust. I stretched all 6 of my arms. It took longer than I thought because of the extensive range. This place where I stood was my nest, hidden within the city's secret passages. The passage that used to be nothing more than discarded garbage by past laborers had transformed into something resembling the insides of a living organism. Brownish mucus flowed down the walls, ceiling, and floor, and spores were constantly ejected in various places. If a regular organism were to enter here, where the ventilation system was absent, it probably wouldn't last long due to the peculiar air. Building a big nest was the right choice. The completed nest had a diameter of 500 meters. Compared to the enormous city spanning 60 kilometers, it was relatively small. However, when linked, it covered about a quarter of the city, including all of the residential zone and roughly a third of the commercial and entertainment zones. Unlike research vessels, the city was full of activity, so it would be difficult to detect the precise movements of both humans and machines. However, if I concentrated, I could monitor the movements of the enemies targeting me. As I got up and stretched, a sudden hunger washed over me. Creating the nest depleted most of the remaining energy. After the battle with the armed police, I had been receiving a steady supply of food through a new slave, William, the head of the Port District's detective team. I didn't kill him after capturing him through Armed Police Unit 103. He's a clever one, so it would be a waste to just eat him. William was the only person who had found me independently and was one of the people who pushed me into a tough battle. In the long run, he was a useful person for me. At least compared to the mostly insane Unit 103, he was a much more useful slave. So that day, I spared William and instead devoured Unit 103. Seeing me eat a living person right in front of him, he had completely lost his sanity. Even before I implanted the parasite in his head, he had already fully submitted to me. Of course, his submission and the parasite were separate matters, so I implanted the parasite in his head. Like most people, he shuddered, but he offered no further resistance. Turning William into a slave allowed me to obtain all the information related to the broker he had, and thanks to that, I knew exactly where the smuggled organisms were stored in the containers. I didn't need to enslave the personnel of the materials management team or the contraband animal surveillance team. I could directly raid the containers. Well, I might need William's help when it's time to go. Since I couldn't do anything about the cameras, I was still relying on him. William, under the pretext of focusing on security in the Port District, had the authority to change the camera placements and Android patrol routes at will. Within the Port District security team, he seemed to have a fair amount of influence, and there was no one within the team who doubted his intentions. Every time there was a change in cameras or patrol routes, he reported the surveillance's weak points to me. Thanks to him, I could easily roam around the Port District. Of course, I couldn't go to eat smuggled animals too frequently, as it would raise suspicions, so I only did so once every 3 days. Today happens to be the day to get some smuggled animals. I was contemplating whether it was time to wake up the sleeping ones when a communication device lying on the floor started ringing. William, it was surprising to receive a call when it wasn't time to replace the parasite. Come to think of it, I've been receiving signals continuously since earlier. While I was building my nest, messengers from the parasites had flown over several times. They were reporting that my host would cause harm to me, so they would inflict suffering. It wasn't betrayal. The parasite within him was at stage 5. Even if he merely contemplated betrayal, he would suffer excruciating pain and die. The messengers from the parasite were more like a mild warning. Considering this, something must be going on. Let's answer. I answered the communication device with 103's voice. What's going on? There is someone pursuing the owner. Pursuing the owner? Yes. A journalist from Daily Mass, an agency operated by Prime Capital. Operated by Prime Capital? Media control, huh? That should be the Zhao family. The Zhao family, as per the setting, controlled the media, entertainment, and other media-related sectors through Prime Capital. They were a bunch of people who dealt with information itself rather than direct combat, which made them quite annoying in the game. Even on a planet with fewer than 100 residents, they criticized the governor. If they couldn't enter a planet directly, they'd launch satellites nearby to broadcast within the planet. This eccentric group had an overwhelming information network, making it difficult for players hostile to Megacorp to compete. I've been searching for a way to block their signals too. Here in reality, I was growing in a completely different way from the game, but ultimately, the time had come. A journalist, huh? If the opponent was a journalist, it was already decided that I needed to eliminate her. If I left her alone, she would be endlessly troublesome. They've taken photos of her with the cameras installed in the house. I will send the pictures via email. Then, an alert popped up on the communication device screen, indicating the arrival of an email. I guess I'll have to deal with this side today. There was a woman with brown hair sitting at the dining table. She had no idea about the fate that awaited her. She simply smiled. If reporters have started looking for me, I need to finish this as quickly as possible. Being a profession reliant on social networks, journalists frequently share information among themselves. It's not safe to assume that only one person is investigating me. People who know me or have connections will multiply in no time. So, controlling them like parasites is difficult. It's not that they have a strong journalist spirit or resistance. The reason it's difficult to control them is the same as why journalists can be a challenge to handle. It's all about social connections. As a profession that involves meeting various people, some completely unknown or through networking, any deviation from their usual behavior would quickly raise suspicions. In other words, it's more advantageous for me to use her as bait rather than turning her into a slave. I picked up the communication device again and asked William, "What's her mode of transportation?" She came on foot. She'll probably use the subway to cross the city. If she's from a newspaper, she's likely located in the commercial district. However, there are no newspapers around the manhole. If the distance is too far, it's not easy for me to go and get her. However, calling William to bring her poses its own set of problems. If she disappears, William will become the prime suspect. He's still a useful pawn. I kept him alive for a reason, and it would be a waste to lose him so soon. Wait, the subway. Some parts of the secret passage where my nest is located are very close to the subway tracks. There are cameras at the platforms, but no separate cameras on the tracks. Was there a part connected between the subway tracks and the secret passage? I don't remember such a place in the game, but this is reality. If there's a part close to the tracks and the secret passage, I can break through the wall to connect them. I hadn't considered the subway station before because there were too many cameras, but if I can access the tracks, my field of operation will expand significantly. The nest is complete. Let's check it out. I lay down on the floor and connected the auxiliary system under my chin to the nest. My senses were pulled and expanded by something. The link was established, and I began receiving information about the events happening in the city. It's noisy, the lives and movements of the inhabitants, in contrast to the static research vessel, felt incredibly chaotic due to the vast amount of information. The movements of trains heating the metal tracks, the sounds of people's footsteps, the breaths and coughs of those in the subway, the unpleasant scent of sweat and odors. The elements emerging from the city's veins stimulated my 5 senses. The subway is covered. Now, where's the point closest to the tracks? After expanding my senses and surveying my surroundings, I found several places where I could easily access the tracks with a little corrosion of the metal walls. Among these, there are 3 places I could attempt, 2 in the entertainment district and 1 in the commercial district. There were a few more points near the tracks, but I excluded them due to various issues. Some were too narrow for me to maneuver through, while others were too close to the platforms, increasing the risk of detection despite my efforts to create a passage. It seems to be related to the number of stations. In this city that I know, the entertainment district had the most stations, followed by the commercial district. I'll check the commercial district later after I break through the entertainment district. I disconnected the link and stood up. As I was heading toward the secret passage closely connected to the tracks, number 26 spoke to me. "Where are you going?" "ZZZ, just for a walk." All right, come quickly, duh. With that said, the little guy cuddled up to it high and fell asleep again. Both of them were wild animals, so they got along well, perhaps sharing some kind of unspoken bond. It's a sight you don't often see in the game. Amorph was naturally a race that for solo play, and most other races I tried were not very compatible with party play. Thinking about it, I've played more of a play style that destroys parties than participates in them. I've had my fair share of clashes that led to clan disbandment. When I used to fight on the Forest planet, I was really at my best. Once, when I was just a lower-tiered entity, from major clans joined forces to surround me on a Forest planet. Since there were many rankers involved, it was difficult for me to win. At that time, I used every possible method and trick that Amorph could use. Many of the strategies I use in battles now were first used or developed during that battle. That fight helped me a lot. Of course, I'd never want to do it again. However, the clans that came to capture me fell for my trickery, fought among themselves, and ended up annihilating each other. 3 of the 4 clans disbanded afterward, and even the relatively intact clan suffered significant losses as its members mass quit, reducing their numbers from 100 to 60. It's ironic that I used to break up parties, and now I have companions with me. And all of this in a world where the in-game background became reality. As I reminisced about old memories while walking, I quickly reached my destination. I hadn't expanded my nest to this area in the residential district yet. Should I set up another one here too? Each time I evolve, the number of nests I can create increases by 2. So, as a current precinct, I can create a total of 5 nests. I've already created 1, leaving me with 4 more. I should create 1 after devouring the journalist. I resolved to use the energy provided by this prey for a new nest and touch the wall. Compared to the other walls, the wall I touched transmitted the vibrations caused by the moving train more distinctly. Let's get started then. I used my fingernail to create a cut on my palm. Acidic blood, which could easily melt even tough alloys, oozed from the wound. The blood flowed from my palm to the metal wall, which began to emit smoke as it melted. Once the wound healed, I repeated the same process. After about 10 minutes, a hole appeared in the wall. That should do it. I stopped inflicting wounds and kicked the wall around the hole with my foot. Thanks to the enhanced properties of my strength, my kick was enough to warp even the thick alloy wall. After enlarging the hole with my hands, I peeled away the melted metal. As a result, I had created a hole of sufficient size for me to crawl through. When I crossed over to the tracks, I was greeted by the distinctive fine dust of the subway. The strong scent of iron emanating from the steel rails and the faint flow of electricity through the rails caressed my auxiliary organ. As I examined the old tracks, I noticed a light in the distance. A train was approaching. The path is open. Now, all that's left is information about the prey I'm going to hunt. I'll have to ask William when I meet him. It was 10:30 p.m. By the time the light in the commercial district had almost disappeared, Kevin was able to leave the Daily Mass office. It's so late. Despite the late working hours, she didn't feel bad at all. The office manager was very satisfied with the coverage she had brought, and she mentioned considering her promotion after the board meeting. Does a promotion mean I'll get into the administrative district? Or perhaps it could lead to her being transferred to a better planet, away from this wretched city. With such happy thoughts in mind, Kevin waited for the subway at the station. There was no one on the platform except her, but she didn't feel scared. The subway station was equipped with numerous cameras, and security personnel were watching for any issues beyond the camera's view. However, something unexpected happened that went against her common sense. The lights inside the platform suddenly went out. Kevin was startled and sat in place in the dark. While she remained frozen, a message came over the station speakers. We apologize. We are currently conducting power checks on the interior lighting of the subway station as part of the preparations for the board meeting. We will activate emergency power for those inside the platform. Please wait for a moment. The message played, and soon, red emergency lights illuminated the platform's interior. Damn, why are they checking the power at this hour? Kevin muttered while brushing her knees. Lately, The entire subway station had been conducting power checks during the last train hours as part of the preparations for the board meeting. However, Kevin had no way of knowing this, as it wasn't something typically known to the subway security staff. The red lighting created a somewhat eerie atmosphere inside the platform. Kevin clenched her bag tightly, waiting for the train. She was frustrated, wondering when the train would arrive. Anyway, when's the train coming? Huh. In her anxious gaze, Kevin spotted a man who had not been there a moment ago. He was standing on the same line as her. While it was unnerving to be alone in the red light, it was somewhat reassuring to have someone else there with her. As she pondered the mysterious man, she suddenly noticed a strange smell. Where's this smell coming from? The peculiar, damp smell of the underground subway station was different in quality from the norm, and it reached Kevin's nostrils for the first time in her life. Is it because of the smell? She couldn't help but feel an unknown unease. Come to think of it, when did that guy get in? The man was standing close to the staircase leading down to the platform. Even if he had arrived while the lights were off, shouldn't she have heard his footsteps if that was the case? It couldn't have been that he crossed over from the pitch-black railway tracks on the other side. It's strange how people's thoughts work. Try not to think about something eerie only makes more unsettling thoughts surge. Maybe it's better not to travel alone at night. William's words suddenly came to mind. She swallowed hard and glanced sidelong at the suspicious person. And then she was startled. Unbeknownst to her, the suspicious man had turned his body to keep an eye on her. The man who had been observing the side where she stood began to move. He slowly approached her. Oh, please don't. She wanted to run away, but her body had frozen, leaving her unable to move. Her colleagues at Daily Mass referred to her as Lunatic Kevin. It was a nickname she earned because she fearlessly pursued special news stories, regardless of who the subject was. In reality, she wasn't that brave. The reason she could act this way was due to her belonging to the Daily Mass organization, and even more so, the aura of the Zhao family. Daily Mass, without the protection of the Zhao family, was nothing more than a minor tabloid publication. Kevin was only something significant because of the Zhao family's influence. Without it, she was nothing. As the man got closer, and Kevin was feeling desperate, a rescue sound reached her ears. Behind the man, on the other side of the tracks, a train was approaching with its lights on. As the train pulled in, the man stood in place. As soon as the train reached the platform, its doors opened, and Kevin hurriedly got inside. The man hesitated and tried to get on the train belatedly, but the doors had already closed. The man's mouth moved, and he shouted something, but it didn't reach her. "You crazy son of a." While Kevin cursed him in her mind, the train started moving. What a ing weirdo. The suspicious man had moved away, and the train was now running towards the next station. Relieved, she took her seat. As her tension eased, a sudden drowsiness overcame her. She considered closing her eyes briefly until they arrived. Is that smell again? The unpleasant odor grew stronger, and she opened her eyes. She looked around, but her train car was empty. If that unpleasant smell from earlier hadn't come back to my nose, I might have actually fallen asleep. As she glanced around, her gaze fell on the adjacent car, where someone was seated. The person in the next car wore a suit that resembled a wetsuit, with black alloy plates added as armor. Is that a cop? She was familiar with the attire, due to her being a journalist. The suit resembled the reinforced gear worn by heavily armed police officers. Why would they wear a helmet and a mask in the middle of the night? Where could they be going like this? Not only the attire, but also the behavior was peculiar. Despite no one in the adjacent car, the police officer stood, not sitting. The outfit was strange, and their behavior was peculiar. In an empty car, the police officer stood rather than sitting down, maintaining the same posture throughout. What a strange fellow. But she didn't suspect that a fully armored police officer could be anything out of the ordinary, so she lost interest and closed her eyes. While she had her eyes closed, the police officer who had been standing still moved closer to her. When he opened the door to her car and stepped inside, the car shook slightly. "Miss, what, huh?" Due to the car shaking, she was roused from her half-sleep. The shaking of the car had disrupted her nap. Opening her eyes, She could finally see the interior of the car reflected on the reinforced glass. Inside the car she had boarded, the only human was herself. "Where are you going?" I lowered my tail and tripped Kevin, who was trying to escape. Thanks to the pheromone effect of my exoskeleton, she tripped over it. "Hey, please spare me." Of course, I couldn't spare her. To silence her noisy pleas, I decided to use my poisonous stinger. So I almost messed up earlier. Originally, I had planned to ambush and sting her while she was lured during the light inspection. However, a random man had interfered, almost blowing my cover. Unfortunately, he had spotted me climbing up from the other side of the tracks. But it wasn't easy to deal with the man. He was located near the stairs, close to the lights, and was fully exposed to the cameras. Trying to eliminate him along with the journalist was too risky. Killing her was easy. One sting of my poisonous barb would do it. However, dealing with the aftermath would be the issue. Thanks to the man, I had to rethink my plans. Fortunately, the train arrived just in time. As Kevin boarded the train, I followed her inside. The man belatedly shouted for her to run, but Kevin didn't hear him. Thanks to the man, I had to rethink my plans. Fortunately, the train arrived just in time. As Kevin boarded the train, I followed her inside. The man belatedly shouted for her to run, but Kevin didn't hear him. A journalist who doesn't listen to others, even when her life is at stake. Life was inherently ironic. Her face was a mess, with mascara smudged from her tears, her mouth wide open from screaming, and drool dripping down her chin. What did she be thinking right now? Did she not want to die? Or was it just fear of facing a monster? It didn't matter much. What mattered was that she would soon become the nourishment for my nest. I reached out and grabbed her head, twisting it with a sound of rubber tearing. Her head was pulled off. A journalist who had tormented others with words all her life had her last moments in silence. I opened my mouth wide and swallowed her head in one gulp. Not bad. For a journalist, her taste wasn't too terrible. Among the humans she had eaten since coming to the space city, this one had a decent flavor. It's strange. Wolves, being closer to animals, didn't taste like this when I ate them. It's fascinating how humans have this flavor. Wolves didn't taste bad, but their fur made it a bit inconvenient to eat. Hairs kept getting stuck in my teeth while I ate them. On top of that, there's a human smell, and I have to eat 18 more of those wolf-like creatures. Come to think of it, she does have the tooth-strengthening trait. I hope the predation effect activates. Well, let's finish the meal. Shaking off my unnecessary thoughts, I finish my meal. And then, pre-saint, quasi-saint evolution conditions partly have been met. Conditions: transformable species 2/20, incomplete. Humanoid species 13/20, incomplete. Psychic power using species 0/20, incomplete. Predation effect activated. Successfully obtained carnivorous power genetic essence. Extracted the carnivorous power from the biological characteristics of human. Do you want to apply carnivorous power? An unexpected stroke of luck had occurred. I thought I might have seen it wrong, but the transparent text box shimmering in the air didn't disappear. It's real. It's a bit different from what I was thinking. I wanted a trait that would enhance my teeth, but carnivorous power doesn't seem to be a problem. Amorpha's carnivorous power isn't particularly weak. After all, it can easily chew through human skulls, making it superior compared to Earth's animals. However, in a world of space survival filled with highly protective armor and equipment, that level of biting strength isn't anything special. Amorpha's mouth structure is closer to a mix of snakes and common animals. The way it opens its mouth wide to firmly grasp its prey is snake-like, but the subsequent careful chewing is similar to that of typical carnivorous animals. If I gain the carnivorous power trait, it can become a weapon in itself. In the game, carnivorous power was considered a decent trait. It wasn't necessary, but it was a useful attribute, like the claws of a predator. To use the Transcendent system, I needed to have a total of 13 physical-related traits. Currently, I was lacking in each of those traits, so having this one was much better than having none. With carnivorous power, I'll have a total of 12. I just need one more to go. I accepted it, and my head started to change. My jaw slightly ached, and then the sound of bones colliding followed as my size increased. My head grew larger accordingly. As my head and jaw grew, the auxiliary mechanism underneath my jaw also became longer and thicker. The change wasn't just about size. My teeth seemed to tingle, and the structure of my teeth was slightly different from before. It wasn't a significant mutation, so it didn't take long to complete. After the mutation, I examined my face reflected in the reinforced glass of the subway. Overall, my head had become larger, giving a slightly different impression. My previous head felt pointed, like a lizard, whereas now it felt thicker and more robust, like an anaconda. And my teeth had changed as well, making them longer in the part of my teeth that corresponded to human canines. If they grew a bit more, you could even call them fangs. They looked cute in the game. Was it because it was reality? I now had a much more intimidating appearance. Not only did it look scary, but thanks to the carnivorous power, I should be able to chew through the alloy inside the spaceship without any problems. I'd like to test it, but it's a shame, but it's time to get off. We'll arrive at the next station in a few minutes, so I need to prepare to disembark. I picked up the bag that the journalist had dropped. So, how am I going to get out? As William had mentioned, the train was the last one for now. Even if we reached the next station, the chances of finding people there were low, but there was one problem. The man from the platform earlier. When the train was departing, judging by his demeanor, it was highly likely that he had reported me. Back when I was on the platform, I had already activated my camouflage mechanism, so he probably saw me as a police officer rather than monster. Not being seen as a monster was fortunate, but the issue was that he saw me crawling from the tracks to the platform. I should open the door on the opposite side of the platform. A few moments later, a broadcast announced that we would be arriving at the station soon. I crossed over the car and moved to a car as far away from the platform as possible. The moving train gradually slowed down, and the sharp sound of friction between the wheels and the tracks echoed. Just as I expected, with my body crouched down, I looked out the window. In the distance, subway security personnel were waiting for the train. I grabbed the door on the opposite side of the platform with my combat arms. Thanks to Amorpha's robust strength, the door opened easily. Before arriving at the platform, I jumped out of the slowly moving train. It might be different if I was running at full speed, but I could easily endure this level of impact. Landing safely on the tracks without any special equipment, I moved quickly before they could board the train. What's going on? Hey, this door is open. What are you talking about? Ignoring the startled security personnel's voices, I crawled into the darkness of the tracks. When I returned to the nest, numbers 26 and Ed High were awake. Number 26 was playing with spores, and Ed High was grooming its wings with its tentacles. Number 26, who saw me, greeted me by emitting light from his body. Yuri back. ZZZ, yes. Big baby, something's different. Number 26, who noticed the change in me, approached me. It seemed intrigued, extending its tentacles to gently touch my face. Big baby grew really fast. ZZZ. I'm in the midst of growing. Impressive. Ed High, too, appeared to have developed curiosity and came closer to me. Adult changed. ZZZZ, that's right. Mouth tentacles, cool features, great young one. Ed High seemed particularly pleased with my enhanced auxiliary mechanisms, which had grown thicker compared to before. It sent out a wave of praise, then lowered its body. Galagon seems to like the shape of my tentacles, even though it's not in the settings. Galagon is an NPC creature, and being rare, not much is known about its ecology. I'm well informed about its weaknesses and what to be cautious of, but I don't know much about their ecology. Still, it's nice to be appreciated from that side. Unlike number 26, Ed High is in a contractual relationship with me. So, if he takes a liking to me, that's a good thing. Big baby, since you're still young, eat a lot and grow quickly. ZZZZ, yes thanks. I want to grow quickly too. The little one who was perched on my shoulder suddenly seemed a bit down. It seemed like I was growing quickly, but it wasn't able to, which was probably bothering it. When thinking about the future, it was important to accelerate number 20SXS growth. Last time, when I was fighting with the androids in the apartment, I realized that even with all my abilities, there were limitations to fighting alone. Maybe if I had all the traits, it would be different, but in my current situation, hunting enemies at ease wasn't easy. If those two hadn't been there last time, I would have had a much harder time. Without luck, I might have been defeated while fighting alone. In the game, it's fine to die, but it's not reality. In reality, suffering a fatal injury is much more disadvantageous compared to games. In games, you simply respawn after dying, but in reality, it's not that simple. Fatal injuries increase the likelihood of defeat, and defeat ultimately leads to death. To avoid that, I need to pay more attention to number 26's growth. However, not being able to know the growth conditions and process of the sea demon is undoubtedly a problem. Sea demons are not as rare as Galagons, but they are not creatures that players can easily study, so their ecology is not well known. Still, I can make educated guesses. Sea demons are creatures that exist only in the deep sea of the ocean planet. By selecting creatures with similar characteristics to those that inhabit the deep sea and feeding them to number 26, it might be possible to make it grow quickly. So far, I have mainly provided them with creatures that I don't need, but I might need to change my approach slightly. I mean, providing creatures that don't help me much, but could be helpful to number 26. Fortunately, there are still a few creatures in the smuggling list that meet these criteria. ZZZ. If you eat a lot, you'll grow quickly. Really? ZZZZZZ, yeah. Let's try it. Yeah, I'm hungry too. ZZZ, you too. It seems like I'll have to call William again. E-District Apartments in the residential zone. A man was spending his time watching virtual TV. Like most of the people living in this residential zone, he seemed to be immersed in the stimulating virtual reality with a carefree expression. At that moment, a communication device next to the man chimed softly. The man's hazy gaze instantly sharpened. The man turned off the virtual TV and checked the communication device. A short message was displayed on the small screen. Operation ready. Finally, it's here, muttered the man, Jade Russell. A year ago, Jade Russell received a specific order from Si-Hyun Yujin. The order was to secretly smuggle a Galagon disguised as a fairy wing into the space city before the council's announcement. Jade was also tasked with infiltrating along with it. Although it hadn't been officially announced by the council, Si-Hyun Yujin was known as Akira Yujin Shadow. Obtaining crucial information related to Noble Capital was not a difficult task for him. The reason for disguising the Galagon as a fairy wing was partly because their appearances were somewhat similar, but mostly because smuggling with fairy wings was almost non-existent. Si-Hyun and Jade both knew that smuggling often occurred in the special trade zone, so this was a precaution to prevent any potential smuggling attempts. After completing all the preparations, Jade pretended to smuggle the Galagon disguised as a fairy wing at the special trade zone. He intentionally got caught by the smuggling animal control team. Once the Galagon was handed over to the team, the first objective was accomplished, and he managed to escape secretly from the detention center. It's time to put this ability to good use again. Jade looked down at the communication device in his hand. Suddenly, the battery ran out, and the body of the communication device slowly disintegrated, being absorbed into the palm of his hand. A few minutes later, the communication device had completely vanished, leaving only some metal dust and a set of sharp teeth on his palm. The Russell family consisted of individuals raised directly by the Yujin family, or more precisely, Si-Hyun Yujin. Si-Hyun gave each individual in the Russell family specific roles and provided them with what they needed according to those roles. For example, Arnold Russell received a valuable weapon, a plasma pistol suitable for his role, while Jade Russell received the genes of a rare and hard-to-acquire creature. The original source of his genetic material was a metallic gremlin, a notorious creature known as a predator on spaceships. Metallic gremlins were about 30 to 80 centimeters in size and resembled hairless primates. The key difference was that their skin was entirely metallic in color. They had no eyes on their faces, and they had a large, circular mouth that could cover half of their face. The grotesque appearance of the metallic gremlins aside, what made them the symbol of dread for the crew were their habits. These creatures gathered in swarms, floated through space, and sought out their prey. And the prey of the metallic gremlins was metal. Drifting through space, when they encountered spacecraft, they immediately clung to the outer hull and ruthlessly tore and devoured the metal with their voracious, lightning-fast mouths. Their speed was so swift that even a massive battleship, if caught by a group of metallic gremlins, would be reduced to a mere skeleton within a day. These formidable creatures were challenging not only due to their threat, but also because of their small size, making them difficult to detect on a ship's radar, even with advanced technology that struggled to distinguish them from space debris or small asteroids. Furthermore, even if they were discovered early, their bodies, composed of metal, made them resilient to laser weapons. This often led to cases where a presumed dead gremlin would later launch another assault. As a result, many spacecraft continued to be the prey of metallic gremlins, leading to the inevitable end of their operational life. If it weren't for the Eugen family, extracting and using the genes of these threatening creatures would have been unthinkable. Thanks to this ability, escaping was not difficult. While he was imprisoned, he used the abilities of the metallic gremlin to break free. After that, he received help from his comrades, underwent plastic surgery, and had been in hiding until now. I need to retrieve Galagon. Jade stood up from his seat. It was time to prepare for the mission his owner, Si-hyun Eugen, had entrusted him with. The container where Galagon was stored was protected by a high-level encryption, but it didn't matter. With his abilities, he could easily unlock it. Jade took out another communication device and contacted the colleagues who had been in hiding with him. They needed to keep Galagon in a deep freeze until Si-hyun Eugen arrived. Let's get going. Everything was perfect, or so he thought. That's why he didn't anticipate what was about to happen. The most crucial part of his plan, the blue Galagon, was now roaming beneath his feet with some strange creatures.